Chapter 4687. The vine whip left a long and thin white mark on Eubation's arm. Arbor's eyes were clear and bone-chilling. Family head you, didn't you receive your son's life lantern miniature? What? You didn't see it clearly? The venerable peach blossom immortal glanced at Arbor helplessly. As long as Jojo encountered someone he disliked, his words would be extremely sharp and terrifying. He could already imagine how stimulating the little stoic's next words would be. As expected, Arbor didn't need Eubation's reply and naturally continued. Your son's spirit energy dissipated, and in the end, I used this dagger to repeatedly stab his neck meridians. Then, Arbor suddenly winked at Eubaton and sneered, he died. Yuhui released 2 zombies, one big and one small, outside Qian Luo's underground arena. The small zombie even bit her and almost killed her. Just because she didn't die didn't mean she wasn't injured. At the time, she was so scared that she almost fainted. She thought she would never see Jojo's lotus for the rest of her life. She had suffered a great loss at Yu Hui's hands, and from then on, she developed a habit. When fighting zombies, she had to pay special attention to their movements in case there was a companion zombie hidden somewhere on their bodies. This incident had both pros and cons for her. At the time, she clearly understood that she wasn't invincible. When fighting zombies, if she let her guard down, she might suffer a fatal blow. Eubaton clenched his fists tightly and roared. Then, a large group of weirdos wrapped in rhinoceros skin charged toward them like a tide. Eubation's gaze abruptly turned cold as he stared at Xiaomu. Suddenly, he sidestepped and reached out to grab her. The venerable peach blossom immortal's seemingly soft palm quickly dispersed Eubation's attack. He leaped away and lured Eubaton to the side to exchange blows. Eubaton wasn't a fool. He naturally saw that Arbor was the core of this place. Right now, as long as he could grab Arbor with lightning speed, he could resolve all of his current troubles and rescue Qinya from the defensive talisman matrix. With a wave of Eubation's hand, a huge beast abruptly jumped out of the spirit beast space and swiped its claws at the venerable peach blossom immortal. Ma Shurchen didn't even look at it. A wisp of wood spirit energy attached to her long sword softly attacked the huge spirit beast. Meanwhile, on the other side, Eubaton took the opportunity to turn around. Like a great rock spreading its wings, he aggressively pounced toward Xiaomu. As long as he succeeded, Arbor would be in his hands. At that time, no matter how powerful these people were, they would have to obediently submit to him, Eubaton. Eubation's iron claw was about to grip Xiaomu's neck. Suddenly, a sword shot out from the side and quickly deflected Eubation's claws. Eubaton was furious. He turned to look and couldn't help but roar, "What are you doing?" The man who attacked him was one of his subordinates. He must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. How dare he attack him? The subordinate was so frightened that his face turned pale. He stammered, I didn't do it on purpose. Deputy Hall Master, shut up." Eubaton slapped the subordinate blocking his way. Like chopping vegetables, the young man's head was chopped to the side. Arbor couldn't help but shake his head. "Patriarch, you're too ruthless." Chapter 4688. In any case, that person was still his subordinate. Although he had been controlled by her telekinesis midway and had rushed over to block the claw for her. But in essence, that person had not done so willingly. And Eubaton, this obstinate and self-opinionated old man, did not even give him a chance to explain himself before killing him. "Deputy Hall Master?" Arbor coldly glanced at Eubaton. "You are the Flying Heavens Deputy Hall Master?" Eubaton looked at her with a cold smile. "You don't need to know who I am. You only need to know that what's going on?" This time, Eubaton was truly stunned. He had seen very clearly just now that when his iron claw reached for Arbor, a heavenly fate disciple had suddenly turned around and blocked the claw for her with a blade. Eubaton glared angrily at Arbor. "Little girl, do you think I don't know that you are actually someone with witchcraft?" Ignorant and ill-informed. Arbor disdainfully glanced at him, then glanced behind Eubaton. Eubaton immediately turned his head back vigilantly. Who would have thought that there was no one behind him at all? He instantly realized that he had been tricked. But it was too late. Arbor's startled swan dagger twirled with a gorgeous light and quickly moved to the old man's side, stabbing directly at his neck. After a few stabs, Arbor could not help but be stunned. She thought to herself, this Eubation's body has been modified to be like an iron bastion. Is it this sturdy? There are no flaws at all. The water spirit's power to turn ice is actually useless against him? When she looked up again, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who had finished off the large beast, had already floated to Arbor's side. He glanced at Eubation with a cold expression. This person has a lot of rhinoceros-skinned people with him, Ji-Chen said softly. Because after killing a group of rhinoceros-skinned people, the number of rhinoceros-skinned people in the enemy camp had suddenly doubled. It was clear that someone had a storage talisman or a spatial spirit artifact, secretly releasing a continuous stream of battle power. It's fine. Pass down the order to kill the Heavenly Fate team in batches. 30 teams will go first, and the rest will rest. After that, we'll take turns. Arbor said coldly. He thought coldly in his heart, I'd like to see who will be the one to die of exhaustion. There were 30,000 elite members of the triple-kill Heavenly Fate squad on this island as long as there were no accidents. It was impossible for Eubation to escape from this place. As she thought about it, she felt an inexplicable sense of irritation. Something flashed through her mind, but she couldn't remember what it was. Eubation coldly ordered, prepare the Godstone cannons at the back. As he spoke, several divine stone cannons appeared in front of the defensive formation. They were pushed forward by more than a dozen people. On Arbor's side, the Kill Heaven's Fate team was frantically killing the rhinoceros-skinned mutants. However, their numbers were like a steady stream, gradually increasing. Killing the Heavenly Fate battle team had left them feeling a little tired. Fortunately, they had obeyed Arbor's orders and prepared 4 large groups of people. Every round they would take turns, and there would always be time to catch their breaths and recover. As they spoke, the Heavenly Fate members at the back began to attack the defensive formation under the cover of Eubation and the others. They planned to use the Godstone cannons to blast open the defensive formation and rush into the snowy mountain valley to rescue Muchinya. Flying Paradise was really a big deal. Xiao Mu looked on coldly from the sidelines as they fooled around. If they could blast it open, it would be her loss. Chapter 4689. Did Eubation think the defensive talisman array was a joke? That was a defensive array that she had stacked countless times. Just the handful of peerless purple talismans that he had spilled out had already reached a terrifying level that no one could estimate. Even if she used so many God's stone cannons to bombard it, it would still be futile in less than half a month. Besides, as long as she continued to replenish talisman energy, this defensive array would be destroyed. It would be a fool's dream if he wanted to destroy it. She didn't remind Eubation of the mysteries of the talisman array. Xiao Mu had been watching coldly from the sidelines the entire time, watching this group of people jumping up and down and tormenting themselves in front of her like clowns. Eubation's loyal and protective expression disgusted Xiao Mu a bit. What kind of magic potion did Muchinya feed him that he would save her at all costs? Arbor was very sure that today's incident wasn't ordered by the higher-ups of Tianyun. How could the higher-ups of Tianyun waste a large number of rhinoceros-skinned mutants to attack the island for a worthless Muchinya? Muchinya wasn't that noble, and she couldn't be that important. In other words, today's battle was definitely Eubation's private action for Muchinya. She didn't expect a heartless woman like Muchinya to have so many idiots around her. How amazing! Arbor curled her lips and glanced at Eubation casually. If Yu Hui knew this in the underworld, he would cry himself to death. Arbor shook her head and sneered. Back then, his father pushed him to his death for an ignorant woman. Now, for this woman, he wants to die together with me like a madman. Do you think you're worthy? You killed Yu Hui, Eubation roared. How dare you make sarcastic remarks? Yu Hui was killed by me. Arbor nodded. He thought to himself, but I've already lost Yu Hui's life for this. I was poisoned and almost died. If the little tree didn't bear a holy fruit, Master Jojo wouldn't exist. Therefore, it was simply an eye for an eye, a quid pro quo. Eubation glared at Arbor. Why do you have to go against Chinya? Arbor couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. However, the smile in her eyes was only on the surface and did not enter her eyes at all. When you say that, why don't you touch your conscience and ask yourself? You and I had never met when we were in Wangka City. Why did you insist on using Jing Minyao's name when you were actually carrying out Mu Qingyao's orders to destroy me? Patriarch, you don't seem to understand one thing. You're the ones who attacked first. Now, what right do you have to cry and shout that you can't beat me? Arbor, let Qingya go, and we'll forget about what happened between us. What a touching truth. Arbor looked at him sarcastically. Kill them. Arbor raised his hand and released 2 Swanni holy beasts. Without any explanation, they charged towards Ubatian. Everyone saw 2 gorgeous shadows, one purple and one black, streaking across the sky. Shocked, Ubatian hurriedly summoned a group of rhinoceros-skinned people to protect him. However, the 2 holy beasts had already broken through the crowd and pounced on him. They were so fast that he had no time to react. Chapter 4690. Block it. Ubatian roared angrily. At the same time, his body changed again. A pair of rhinoceros horns grew out of his head, and a complete rhinoceros hide wrapped around his chest and back in an instant, playing a protective role. It wasn't the first time Arbor had seen a demon cultivator mutate. She just felt that Ubatian's rhinoceros hide was a little extreme. She knew that Tian Yun had an extremely significant effect in transforming the human body. They had always tried to turn normal people into mutants, and even tried to do it on cultivators. It was obvious that Tian Yun had made some breakthrough in his research on demon cultivators. Ubatian wrapped himself in rhinoceros hide and hid in the crowd of rhinoceroses. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. The information Tian Yun had gathered about Arbor covered all aspects. It included how many holy beasts had appeared around her, how many transcendent realm cultivators she had, and the latest information that she might have spirit realm. It could be said that he had investigated everything in great detail. However, legends and hearsay were one thing. At this moment, witnessing her summoning 2 Swanni sacred beasts without saying a word was another matter altogether. Ubatian's eyes flashed with madness. No one knew what he was thinking right now. If he could make use of the 2 Swanni saint beasts, Ubatian couldn't help but take a deep breath when he thought of this. He carefully wrapped himself in rhinoceros hide and moved a few steps behind the rhinoceroses. Then he shouted, "Focus fire on the defensive wall to the east. No matter what method you use, break it first." Before he could finish his words, he suddenly heard a rumbling sound coming from above his head. When he looked up, he saw a huge iron ball rolling down from behind. Ubatian's eyes bulged slightly. He really didn't expect a metal ball so big that 10 people couldn't wrap their arms around it to drop down from the sky. "Pay attention to defense." Ubatian shouted again. The rhinoceros-skinned people were like moving corpses that had no thoughts of their own. Hearing this, they all gathered and fought to block the iron ball for Ubatian. Ubatian saw that something was wrong. It seemed that even a dozen rhinoceros-skinned men would not be able to withstand the crushing force of the iron ball. If they didn't run now, when would they? He scrambled out of the mutated crowd and turned around to look at the big iron ball that was emitting a black light above the rhinoceros-skinned people. Before he could even breathe a sigh of relief, he couldn't help but roar, "Disperse!" At the same time, the metal ball opened up from the middle like metal flower petals, spreading out piece by piece. Black liquid gushed out of it and shot toward the rhinoceros-skinned people, accompanied by extremely thin silver needles that looked like gadflies. What the hell is this? Ubatian's pupils shrank. At this moment, he wished that his parents had given him 2 more legs so that he could run faster. Arbor stared fixedly at that large iron ball for a long time before curling his lips and muttering to himself, "The iron gallbladder filiform needle made by Duanyu looks quite powerful." It was just that its appearance was really ugly. The last time he asked her how much poison she wanted, it turned out that it was all mixed in with the hidden weapons. In just a few moments, black smoke began to rise from the rhinoceros-skinned man's venom-drenched body. Chapter 4691. Skin and flesh fell off one after another. It was disgusting and horrifying to look at with the naked eye. Arbor shifted his gaze and looked in Ubatian's direction. Family head you, since you're here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Arbor waved his hand in the air, his eyes cold and murderous. Why don't you stay here and become fertilizer? The two Swanee sacred beasts that were originally scattering the rhinoceros-skinned humans abruptly turned around and swooped down in Ubation's direction again. The power of a sacred beast's attack was no laughing matter. How would Ubation dare to meet them head-on? He could only try his best to avoid them. Unfortunately, the two Swanee sacred beasts had received the little master's order and were determined not to let him go. After swooping down and slapping the two rhinoceros-skinned humans away, the two Swanee let out a long cry and attacked Ubation in a pincer attack, one from the front and one from the back. How would Ubation dare to meet them head-on? He hastily pulled a few rhinoceros-skinned humans in front of him and fled toward the defensive wall. Right now, he was feeling a bit anxious and irritated. Arbor's guess was correct. He had privately decided to rescue Chinya this time. He hadn't received any instructions or acknowledgement from Tianyun's higher-ups. It looked like the mutant rhinoceros-skinned humans he brought had suffered heavy casualties. He wouldn't be able to explain himself when he returned. If he still couldn't rescue Chinya after sacrificing so much, then all his previous efforts would be for naught, and the losses would outweigh the gains. When Ubation considered this, his hatred for the little stoic rose steadily to the highest point. It was all this stoic's fault for opposing Chinya at every turn and going against them at every turn. If this stoic hadn't caused so much trouble, Chinya would still be sitting peacefully in Tianyun's headquarters as the high and mighty soaring heavens hall master. Chinya's many years of hard work and painstaking effort were all ruined by this damned little stoic. Even he felt that it wasn't worth it for Chinya, let alone Chinya. Ubation slammed his head into the defensive wall. Only then did he realize that he had nowhere to run. His eyes were red as he turned around and glared at the two Swanee hovering in the air. He roared, "Come on! You've forced me into this situation. If you have the guts, come at me." The two Swanee sacred beasts let out a shrill cry and swooped down from the left and right. Ubation's heartbeat quickened. He counted 3, 2 in his heart. He suddenly turned around and pushed the god's stone cannon out. Braving the sudden gust of wind caused by the holy beast's pouncing attack, he laughed maniacally. His eyes were filled with rage and viciousness. With one hand, he threw all the divine stones he had into the machine. He let out a thunderous roar, "All of you, go to hell!" Boom! When the god's stone cannon fired, because of the excessive amount of god's stones, the entire god's stone cannon couldn't bear the heavy load and suddenly exploded. Ubation was sent flying, but he didn't forget to raise his head and stare fiercely at the two Swanee sacred beasts in the sky. His divine sense had already made all the necessary preparations. Once these two saint beasts were seriously injured and on the verge of death, he decided to immediately send his divine sense into their spiritual consciousness. One was fine, but it would be difficult to control two at the same time. But if there was only one, Ubation suddenly felt like his head was being pricked by needles, as if countless tiny silver needles were uniformly stabbing his brain. Chapter 4692. Suddenly, it was as if a series of incomparably gorgeous fireworks had been set off in his own conscious, exploding with bangs and pops. He could almost feel that his conscious was being shattered, that kind of horror. It felt as if a whole piece of cake had suddenly been crushed by someone's foot and then trampled into smithereens. Ubation held his head and couldn't help but howl. The pain of having one's conscious shattered was indescribable. It was not enough for outsiders to understand. If one hadn't reached that point, they would never be able to experience such pain. It was hard for him to still be able to hold his breath. He held his head slightly and tried to focus his eyes on the two Swanee holy beasts jumping back and forth in the air. They were fine. They were completely fine. The blast of the god's stone cannon just now had an extremely strong recoil. The blast of the god's stone cannon that sent him flying actually didn't have any effect on them. Arbor hurriedly jumped into the air and flew to Little Black and Little Purple. With a stiff little face, she carefully looked up and down at her two little friends. "Are they okay?" The two holy beasts shook their heads at the same time. Arbor breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, at the critical moment, She hurriedly threw out a set of defensive array glyphs and finally blocked a wave of attack for the two. But now, seeing that they were unharmed and that the blast of the god's stone cannon just now didn't seem to have any effect on them at all, she thought that she worried too much. Speaking of which, the defense of holy beasts was incomparable to that of ordinary divine beasts and spirit beasts. The god's stone cannon probably couldn't break the defense of the two holy beasts at all. In this world, probably only the tools used to throw holy stones could cause damage to holy beasts. Arbor's eyes turned slightly and looked at Eubatian, who was lying on the ground, holding his head and struggling at death's door. Her lips curled into a sarcastic sneer. This Eubatian couldn't be a big idiot, right? He actually wanted to pierce through her spiritual conscience and forcefully reverse the contract? Who did he think he was? With his pitiful little divine sense, he could invade her ocean-like conscience? He was really a whimsical person. But now, seeing him lying on the ground obediently and struggling at death's door, Xiao Mu also couldn't be bothered to bicker with him. He was just a person who was about to die. What was there to talk about with a dead person? It was just a waste of time. Arbor, do you think you've won? Eubatian strenuously turned his face towards Arbor with a sneer that was uglier than crying. Arbor was too lazy to care about a dead person. He shifted his gaze and turned to the group of rhinoceros-skinned people who were soaked in venom and gradually rotting on the ground. It could be seen that no matter how much it mutated, it was as if it had an impenetrable body. However, under the influence of the man-eating flower's poison, they would still die. Eubatian mustered the last of his strength to rapidly inflate himself and roll rapidly towards Xiao Mu. Jojo! Yuan Shurchen was shocked. When he turned around, he saw that the crazy old man had no regard for his own life. He wanted to drag Jojo down with him as he blew himself up. Arbor looked on expressionlessly. Another large metal ball flew through the air and smashed straight down at Eubatian. Eubatian's face contorted. He used all the strength in his body and hurriedly dodged the falling metal ball. Just as he was about to get up and run towards Arbor again, suddenly, the third big iron ball fell from the sky and smashed right into his body. Everyone only heard a tragic howl. When they turned around, they saw that Eubatian had been smashed into the ground by the metal ball. Chapter 4693. Only his 2 feet could be seen outside the metal ball, and nothing else could be seen. If someone could notice Eubatian's expression at this moment, they would definitely see his twisted expression of hatred. Eubatian was so unlucky that he self-detonated at this moment. The force of the impact was all sat on by the big metal ball. This guy very enthusiastically blew himself to death. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other, and for a moment, they were somewhat speechless. Xiao Mu swiftly ran to the bottom of the large metal ball and gave it a kick. That metal ball obediently rolled to the side. Arbor took a closer look and immediately narrowed his eyes in disgust. Except for Eubatian's 2 feet, the rest of his body was nowhere to be seen. The black swanee spat out a flame in the air and directly burned the 2 pieces of things into nothingness. Only then did it quickly jump down, shrink into the size of a sparrow, and flutter to Arbor's side to act cute. Arbor allowed this guy to squat on his shoulder and turned to look at the several guard captains of the Tianyun battle team. Do a head count and see the casualties. The defensive barrier in front of them opened. Fairy Huang he led a group of alchemists towards Arbor with a worried expression. Jojo, we can't go on like this. After our location was exposed, there would always be people coming to rescue this Hall Master Mu. This way, it would seem that we are extremely passive, always tired of dealing with this wave of mutated beasts. It probably won't happen in the future. Arbor patted the back of her hand. Believe me, Mu Qingya isn't that important to the Tianyun battle team. Fairy Huang he heard and slightly breathed a sigh of relief. Let's go take a look at everyone's injuries first. Thank you for your trouble. Arbor nodded. You can tell me if you need any herbs. Huang he naturally knew that in Jojo's 100-herb garden on Paradise Planet, all kinds of herbs were already flourishing, and there were probably very few missing types of herbs below the sage level. Huang he nodded and turned to say to the 50-odd alchemists behind her, everyone, divide into 5 groups as usual. Check the injuries as soon as possible. First, Separate the lightly injured from the seriously injured, Huang He spoke as he walked. While assigning tasks, he did not forget to encourage everyone. At night, Arbor hid in the star field to rest. Lying on Xiao Yuan's bed, she tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Thinking about it, it was probably because he had just fought a fierce battle, so his brain was a little more excited. Thus, she got up and took out her gold-beaded talisman brush. She took out a handful of blank talismans and began to inscribe them. Speaking of which, his attainments in drawing talismans were becoming more and more skilled. However, the golden talisman jade tome had always remained on the 10th jade slip. So, she had already memorized the contents of the jade slip by heart. So, it could be said that she could draw several kinds of talismans with a wave of her hand. Recently, she felt that success was coming naturally to her. She should be about to break through to the heaven-grade Great Symbol Master realm in the next few days. Faster, a little faster, a little faster. The pen in Arbor's hand suddenly paused, and a trace of hostility flashed through his eyes. Sure enough, Qiuqiu's voice instantly sounded in her mind. "Master, something's happened outside." Arbor left the star field immediately and appeared in the karst cave. It was already late at night, and it was very quiet. However, torches were brightly lit outside, and there was a hubbub of voices. Jojo. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal walked in with a solemn expression. Chapter 4694. Jojo, Long Huan led his men to ambush us from behind. The killer Heavenly Fate team was caught off guard and lost more than 100 people. Xiao Mu abruptly clenched her fists and couldn't resist closing her eyes. She finally knew why she felt that something was wrong when she was fighting Ubadian. At that time, there was a vague sense of irritation in his heart, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong. It was Long Huan. She did not see Long Huan on the battlefield. When Ubadian and his men came to attack, which corner of the city did he hide in to enjoy the cool breeze? Arbor's eyes lit up. She walked out of the cave. "Let's go take a look." What was Long Huan trying to do? The attitude he had displayed earlier made Xiao Mu feel that this person seemed to be very sincere in alleviating the strained relationship between her and the Dragon Clan. Long Huan had always been the peacemaker. But now Long Huan's sudden betrayal surprised her. The killer Heavenly Fate team members reacted and started to fight back. After all, Long Huan only had 3,000 men under his command. The reason why his sneak attack was successful was because the enemy was not on guard against them at all. If they were to face them head-on, Long Huan's men would not be able to hold out for long. When Arbor rushed over, she saw the two sides fighting fiercely. Long Huan led his 3,000 men and retreated toward the beach. After all, they were outnumbered 10 to 1. Long Huan had held out for long enough. This was because his ambush was successful and caused the killer Heavenly Fate team to panic. Arbor looked coldly in Long Huan's direction through the crowd. Long Shangyun was being protected by a few mermaids. As she retreated, she was anxiously shouting at Long Huan. The voices were too noisy. Arbor could not hear what Long Shangyun was saying, but she could see some clues from her anxious expression. Could it be even Long Shangyun herself didn't understand why her brother would suddenly make a move? Arbor thought for a while and walked up quickly. He glanced at Long Huan coldly but didn't say anything. But when Long Huan met her gaze, he only felt that it was unusually cold, with a trace of bone-chilling coldness. Arbor turned around and whispered a few words to the captains of Team Tianyun. Fairy Yellow Crane led a group of pharmacists and busied themselves in the rear. Last night, he had fought a fierce battle with the rhinoceros skin men that Ubadian had brought with him. The group of alchemists led by the Heavenly Pill Association finally finished their rescue and treatment work. However, he didn't expect to receive news in the blink of an eye that young Master Long had brought people to attack the camp. Over 100 members of the Heavenly Fate team had suffered heavy casualties. The group of alchemists did not rest for long before they dragged their tired bodies and continued to fight to save people. Many pill refiners had weak constitutions, so Fairy Yellow Crane took out a box of nutrient fluid and gave it to them. "Everyone hold on, hold on." Fairy Huang, he urged with a frown as she looked up at Xiao Mu. Xiao Qiao looked calm on the surface, but she knew that Xiao Qiao's heart was filled with disappointment and coldness at this moment. Her relationship with the Dragon Clan was so tense. Previously, she had taken in Long Huan and his sister. This meant that Jojo was absolutely calm in the face of such a big problem. The grudges between Xiao Qiao and the Dragon Clan, compared to the important matters of the country, which was more important. Chapter 4695. She had always been very clear-cut about her personal grudges and wouldn't involve the world's affairs for no reason. However, this Long Huan ultimately disappointed her to the core. Fairy Huang, he couldn't resist glancing at Arbor again. On the other side, Long Shangyun was being protected by several merfolk and involuntarily retreated to the beach. Why? Long Shangyun turned to stare at her brother and asked anxiously, "Why, big brother?" There aren't so many whys in this world. Long Huan calmly glanced at Long Shangyun. Long Shangyun's heart inexplicably skipped a beat. Since Big Brother's expression was so calm and composed, then today's matter must have been planned for a long time and wasn't an impromptu action. So from the moment the 3,000 personal guards joined in to kill the Heavenly Fate Battalion, everything was Big Brother's scheme? But how was that possible? She came out with Big Brother and was very clear about her father's attitude toward the little stoic. Big Brother had always been extremely respectful to Father and almost obeyed his every word. Father told them to get along well with the little stoic, so why would Big Brother suddenly do something like this? Joining in to kill the Heavenly Fate Battalion and then stabbing them in the back. Could it be that all of this was premeditated? Killing the Heavenly Fate Battalion had close to 100 casualties. This number of close to 100 floated back and forth in Long Shangyun's head, bouncing around continuously. She took a deep breath and forcefully closed her eyes, boundless sorrow involuntarily rising in her heart. They couldn't go back. Their relationship with the little stoic couldn't go back. She understood this little cousin too well after interacting with her during this period of time. This was a person who couldn't tolerate even a grain of sand in her eyes. No matter what excuse Big Brother had or what motive he had. Once they started, they couldn't go back. There would always be 100 casualties from killing the Heavenly Fate Battalion between them and the little stoic. Long Huan glanced at his sister's expression and sighed. He couldn't help but say softly, "Time is a bit tight right now. I'll tell you the details after we get to a safe place." He was very sorry that he even hid his own sister from them. How could he feel good on the inside? But all of this was a fate he couldn't defy. He had no choice but to do this. It's still for that 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. Long Shangyun's voice was somewhat hoarse. Its sister Shui Yuan's condition has worsened, right? Long Huan reached out to deflect an arrow that was flying towards him. He turned around to look at his sister. With a complicated expression and a heavy heart, he nodded slightly. Long Shangyun's fingers curled up slightly, and she closed her eyes. "Big Brother, didn't you keep reminding me not to provoke the stoic face? You and I are no match for her." Long Huan clenched his fists tightly and pursed his lips. "Big Brother," Long Shangyun asked with a stern expression, "do you not care about your own life? If the stoic face becomes heartless and callous, she won't consider that we previously interacted harmoniously with her for such a period of time. Now that you've attacked her people, we can no longer be friends. I know. I understand everything you've said. I understand everything." Long Huan raised his hand to cover his face, feeling a little sad. How could he not blame himself, feel uncomfortable, depressed, and irritated? But he really didn't have a choice. Between the entire Long clan and the little stoic, the balance of selfishness in his heart leaned toward the entire Long clan's future. Chapter 4696. So you falling out with grandmother and being chased all the way here by grandmother was actually a ploy? Long Shangyun looked at Long Huan incredulously. It was a ploy, but it was also a ploy out of helplessness. He was forced to accept grandmother's order and hide by the little stoic's side. Until this morning, he suddenly received grandmother's order for him to take 3,000 personal guards and attack immediately. Although he didn't know why grandmother's order was so urgent, he had no other choice but to attack the Heavenly Fate battle team. There was a great disparity in numbers, but because of their surprise attack, the entire Heavenly Fate battle team fell into chaos. I also didn't want to. Long Huan glanced back at Arbor and murmured, "If I had a second choice, I wouldn't choose to stand against her." So the shark pearl is really that important. Long Shangyun couldn't help but clench her fists and take a deep breath. "Shangyun, what's wrong? Didn't you also want to save your sister Shui Yuan very much?" Long Shangyun didn't know what kind of strange emotion she was feeling. She only felt a faint sorrow lingering in her heart. Sister Shui Yuan was very important, but they seemed to be thinking about killing that stoic face and snatching the 10,000-year shark pearl from her to save Sister Shui Yuan. In order to save one relative, he had to kill another. Was this really a good thing? She should be extremely disappointed in the forgetful River Dragon clan. She should no longer have any expectations. Long Shangyun thought. Now that I think about it, the entire forgotten River Dragon clan indeed didn't treat her very well, Long Shangyun said very quietly inside. She has reason to blame us. Long Huan felt his heart tighten, and he abruptly turned to look at Long Shangyun. Grandmother promised me that she wouldn't be harmed. Actually, as long as she hands over the 10,000-year shark pearl, everything will be fine. Grandmother's wrinkled, frosty face seemed to appear before Long Huan's eyes again. She had lost a lot of weight recently, and her cheeks were sunken. So, Grandmother had stared at him with a very strange gaze. "Child, take it as me begging you. For the future of our dragon clan, and for the sake of saving your father's life, you must stand on my side, okay?" "Father's life?" Long Huan heard himself speak in a voice as soft as a mosquito. "Yes, your father's life." His grandmother looked at him firmly and said kindly, "Child, each of us has to make the right choice for our own future. Don't take the wrong path, or you won't be able to turn back." "Young lord." "Young master?" One of the guards pushed Long Huan with his rough hand, trying to wake him up from his thoughts. If he was still in a daze at this time, he would be courting death. Long Yun took a deep breath and hurriedly nodded at the group of personal guards. "Retreat to the rear." Arbor, Yuan Shurchen, and Holy Sun Mi Yen led 30,000 members of the Heaven's Fate battle squad and surrounded the retreating Dragon Clan clansmen. Right at this moment, the seawater behind Long Huan's group suddenly started to surge. Suddenly, many mermen appeared from the sea. They were all armed with firearms and had sharp gazes. All of a sudden, there was a loud explosion. Excitement flashed through the eyes of these attacking mermen. Chapter 4697. Long Qian's words kept echoing in her mind. Take back the 10,000-year-old shark pearl. Take back the 10,000-year-old shark pearl. Create a glorious future for the Wangchuan Dragon Clan. The future was worth looking forward to. As long as they obtained this 10,000-year-old shark pearl, they could awaken the Snowfield's eldest miss who had been in a deep slumber. At that time, the entire Wangchuan Dragon Clan would receive the baptism power of the shark pearl. They would definitely become stronger. Moreover, with the medicine distributed by Tianyun, they could advance indefinitely and even obtain special abilities after consuming it. The Wangchuan Dragon Clan's powerful and prosperous future was just around the corner. Just thinking about it made them excited. Arbor coldly looked at the Wangchuan Dragon Clan who had taken out their firearms. His gaze fell on Long Huan through the crowd. "You're really good." The little stoic's voice was cold and resolute, causing Long Huan's heart to tremble. An indescribable feeling of irritation filled his chest. "If you're willing to hand over the 10,000-year-old shark pearl." Long Huan looked at the little stoic with a complicated expression. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "I can guarantee that grandmother will absolutely not harm you." "Umph," Arbor sneered. "Use your life as a guarantee?" "Yes. I can guarantee it with my life." Long Huan nodded with sincerity. "Unfortunately, your lowly life is worthless." Princess Wushuang snickered in annoyance. She casually summoned the long sword in her conscience and said with a frosty expression, "Let's fight. Why are you spouting so much nonsense? Now that things have come to this, do you still want to reconcile?" "That's right." Qi Xian, little fatty, and the others were trembling in anger. They looked at Jojo worriedly. In the beginning, it was the Wangchuan Dragon Clan who proposed to form an alliance with the three provinces to resist Tianyun. But now, It was this bunch of bastards who betrayed the Three Provinces Alliance first. Is there something wrong with you guys? Qi Xianxian clenched her fists in anger, and her voice trembled. Since you don't have any sincerity in cooperating, who exactly are you trying to disgust by pretending to cooperate from the start? Oh, I understand. You've been tricking us from the start? Isn't that right? At this point in time, any further explanation would be futile. Could Long Huan tell them that he was following his father's instructions to come and talk about the future with Jojo? He knew better than anyone else that cooperating with Tian Yun was simply an act against humanity, and there would be no good end for him in the future. However, the reason he jumped out to carry out his grandmother's orders was partly for the sake of the Dragon Clan's future, and partly for his father. His grandmother had said that his father's body had suffered an extremely serious injury a few years ago. If he could use the shark pearl to extend his life, it might not be able to completely heal his old injury, but it would definitely allow his father to live for another 100 years. He had no better choice. None. He had no other choice but to promise his grandmother. The little sun in Qi Xuanxuan's heart was burning so fiercely that it was about to explode. Her heart ached for her Qiao. What did her Qiao do wrong? What right did everyone have to accuse her of having the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl? What right did everyone have to spit at her and demand her to hand over the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl so righteously? Who do you think you are? Qi Xianxian roared angrily. Long Huan, I thought you were a smart person. But now, it seems that you people from the Wangchuan Dragon Clan are truly disgusting. Chapter 4698. All of you are of the same breed. Qi Xianxian sneered. Put away your greedy faces. Don't make it sound so nice. Exactly. If you want to rob us, just do it. Why do you have to make it sound so righteous? Princess Wushuang sneered. Ma Ta continued, we are not looking down on the people who came to rob us. Let's talk with our abilities. Long Huan lowered his eyes. When he raised his head again, he continued to persuade with a sincere expression. Jojo, grandmother has sent out the most powerful people of the Dragon Clan of Wangchuan. 13th Elder. The 13th Elder was not the 13th Elder. There were 13 elders in total. They were the elders of the Dragon Clan of Wangchuan who had ascended to the Holy Region. No one knew their true abilities. The elders who had ascended to the Holy Region for a longer period of time were naturally more powerful. They might be at the peak of the Immortal Supremacy Realm, or they might have already entered the Godly Supremacy Realm. They might even be half a step into the Holy Supremacy Realm. Of course, they had paid a hefty price to summon all 13 elders back. The heavenly axiom naturally would not allow the 13 elders to suddenly descend on the 3 continents. However, so what if the heavenly axiom did not allow it? So what if the heavenly axiom sealed half of their powers? It was more than enough to deal with Arbor and his people. Jojo. Long Huan was still worried about the little girl. I'm not joking with you. This time grandmother has made up her mind. She had also made up her mind. Actually, the 10,000-year mermaid pearl has been compatible with your body for many years. It can be said that you have formed a contract with it. No one can take it away from you. We are not trying to take it away. We just want to borrow it. Moreover, to be honest, the 10,000-year mermaid pearl was originally the holy item of the Dragon Clan of Wangchuan. Now, we just want to borrow it to carry out the baptism ceremony of the mermaid pearl. There is no loss in giving it to you. Are you done with your nonsense? Arbor interrupted Long Huan coldly. He stared at him coldly. Where is your 13th elder who has ascended to the Holy Region? Are they here yet? If any Tom, Dick, or Harry can sneak out of the Holy Realm, do the ordinary people of the 3 continents still want to live? Arbor's eyes were cold. What is your heavenly Tao? Where is Long Chen? I want to see her. Arbor's eyes were extremely cold. The aura that rose from his body caused people to be shocked. Now, she called her by her name and didn't even say the words, "Old Madam." Long Shangyun felt a little uncomfortable. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she realized that she was in no position to say anything. After the crowd parted, a woman with white hair on her temples and wrinkles on her face walked forward slowly, leaning on a scepter made of green wood. Behind him, profit too, and two clansmen followed closely, looking at Arbor with vigilance. Long Qian, let me ask you the truth. Do you dare to answer me? Ask away. Long Qian looked at the expressionless little girl in front of her. Her eyes were like deep pools of ice, and her heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. This little stoic and her daughter, Long Chuyun, were two completely different people. Long Chuyun could let go of the past because the dragon clan of Wang Chuan had raised her, but this little girl definitely wouldn't. Chapter 4699. A rupture was a rupture, and this relationship couldn't be mended anymore. What's more, they were currently in a state of mutual hostility. The little stoic stared at Long Qian with an extremely cold gaze as though she was looking at a complete stranger. No, it was at most a sweeping glance at a stranger. She looked at her as though she was looking at a mortal enemy. Long Qian's heart trembled for no reason. She didn't want things to be like this, but the truth was that they had already reached this point. No matter who it was, they couldn't turn back. Long clan leader. Duo Chang couldn't help but snicker. We've already reached this point, so there's no need for us to speak nicely to her and answer her questions. It was fine if he didn't know, but ever since Duo Chang found out that Long Qian was so ruthless that she summoned 13 elders who were at the peak of the venerated immortal realm and above from the holy region, his heart calmed down. Thus, his heart calmed down. Everyone was well aware of what kind of people came from the holy region. As long as they could fool the heavenly Tao, everything would be fine today. He had to make this vicious girl hand over his son, Duo Shanming. If this damn girl dared to harm a single strand of his son's hair, he would bury her with his son. The old man's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he stared coldly at Arbor as though he was looking at a dead person. It would be fine if this damn girl was tactful, but if she wasn't, she would have to bear the consequences. Long Qian ignored Duo Chang and sighed. She looked at Arbor indifferently. Mu Qiao, we don't have to come to this point. Stop talking nonsense. Arbor interrupted her again. His eyes were like stars that spun vigorously as though they wanted to suck in a person's soul. Let me ask you. Back then, you also had the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl because of this reason. That's why you sent people to Sikong planet to kill Mother, right? Qi Xianxian and the others were stunned. They had all heard about what happened to Jojo's mother. Wasn't it Mu Qingya who did this terrible thing? Why was Jojo saying that now? Qi Xianxian couldn't help but shudder in her heart. She suddenly raised her head and looked at Long Qian in shock. Long Qian's expression was also changing rapidly as though she couldn't react in time. Arbor no longer needed Long Qian's answer. It was as if a huge hole had been opened in her heart. At this moment, there was a cold wind blowing in from the bottom of her heart, all the way to her limbs and bones. She felt a bone-chilling cold. That icy cold feeling made her unable to speak, unable to utter a single word. Was the truth really so cruel? A person's facial expression was the most realistic. Long Qian wasn't mentally prepared when Arbor suddenly asked her this question. She didn't even notice that her face had twisted slightly for a moment. Arbor saw all the subtle changes in his expression. It really is too scary, Xiaomu thought. Could it be that Mother already knew the truth back then and knew that not all of those people were sent by Mu Qingya? The forgetful River Dragon clan had once sent their clansmen to mix in and take advantage of the situation to take her life. So she simply had nothing left to live for. At that time, she was severely injured and in danger. Even if the mermaid pearl couldn't save her, couldn't it extend her life for another 8 to 10 years? No, she didn't want to save herself anymore. She was so desperate that she completely gave up on herself. She didn't even care about her beloved daughter. Chapter 4700. Long Chuyun had given the millennium-old mermaid pearl to her daughter. Firstly, Arbor was born with a weak body. Without the mermaid pearl, he wouldn't be able to live for long. Secondly, Long Chuyun didn't have the will to continue living. There was a negative emotion that could be explained by 4 words: self-abandonment. In the end, Long Chuyun sealed the mermaid pearl so that Arbor wouldn't know that there was such a powerful weapon in his body. Perhaps it was to protect her, or perhaps it was just as Arbor thought. Her mother would rather she grow up to be a happy and healthy ordinary person and never get involved in the dirty affairs of the aristocratic families. But it was obvious that things didn't go as planned. After all, if she didn't improve, she would be at the mercy of others, just like in her previous life. She couldn't back down. Taking a step back wasn't the end of the world, but it was the end of the world. It was a heavy burden that she couldn't bear. Xiao Mu's face was frosty as she gazed deeply at Long Qian. She no longer needed to ask her why she had attacked her mother. How could she be so heartless as to do such a thing? She didn't want to think about, listen to, or see the cause and effect. Buzz. The fiery evil mosquitoes flew out from her inner world and flew towards the mermaids. At the same time, Qi Xianxian and the others saw countless little black scorpions crawling on the beach behind them. There were tens of thousands of them, and it was enough to make one's scalp go numb. The fiery evil mosquitoes attacked from above while the scorpions crawled from below. Long Qian's face changed. She waved the scepter in her hand and shot out a ray of holy power. Long, she shouted loudly, "Back off, everyone back off." Long Qian shouted coldly, "We can't retreat. Everyone, get into formation and be careful of these mosquitoes." Be careful, retreat? If they retreated, they would be in the ocean. If they retreated into the ocean, wouldn't that mean that the mermaids wanted to retreat? At this very moment, Xiao Mu was like a god of death. A cold glint suddenly appeared in the depths of her icy eyes. There was not a trace of light in her eyes, and they were instantly enveloped by pitch-black darkness. "All of you deserve to die," Arbor said coldly. "Kill the Heavenly Fate battle team. Everyone listen up." "Sir." The shouts of all the members of the Heavenly Fate squad shook the sky. The Forgotten River Dragon clan betrayed their trust and abandoned their morals. They joined an evil cult and persecuted their own people. They'll be treated as a public enemy of humanity. Xiao Mu declared coldly and expressionlessly. "Forget River Dragon clan and forget River clan, kill them all." Yes. Under the lead of the various captains, the Kill Tianyun battle team charged towards the Forgotten River Dragon clan and Forgotten River Duo clan. After the two came into contact with each other, the captain of the Kill Heavenly Fate squad was the first to chop off the head of a member of the Forget River Duo clan. You don't want to be a good person, but you want to be the Heavenly Fortune's lackey. Kill! 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 Rousing battle cries resounded throughout the area at the same time. Killing more than 29,000 people of the Tianyun team, forming hundreds of square formations, one by one broke through the defensive formations of the two great aristocratic families of the River of Forgetfulness. In addition to the Forgotten River Duo clan and Forgotten River Dragon clan, they had to defend against the Kill Heavenly Fate battle team. Secondly, they had to guard against the fiery evil mosquitoes and the scorpions under their feet. It was very tiring. Chapter 4701. A few of the Forgotten River Duo clansmen were attacked by the Sea of Scorpions because they were a step too late. Wherever the scorpions went, the few of them would be eaten clean, leaving only a pile of bones on the ground. Duo Chang jumped up and down. While defending himself, he killed all the fiery demon poisonous mosquitoes that flew in front of him. He looked at Long Qian anxiously. "What's going on? Didn't you say that the 13th elder would be here? Where are they? What kind of joke was this? Was this a lie?" In order to cooperate with the Forgotten River Dragon clan, he had mobilized half of the clan's elite disciples to support them. In order to save his youngest son, he had to take a share of the loot. The 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl was too eye-catching. The Dragon clan leader had promised him that once he obtained the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl, he would allow the Duo clan leader to choose 100 elite disciples to receive the baptism of the pearl. By then these disciples might not be able to change their potential, but the next generation that they gave birth to would definitely be able to improve their potential. This was something that the Dragon clan leader had promised in black and white. There was no way it could run away. If it wasn't for this benefit, why would he allow half of the clan's elite disciples to come and help? It was because of the 13th elder that the Duo clan leader was so calm. As long as he could summon the 13th elder, what couldn't be done? But now what was going on? The Duo clan leader watched as the disciples of the Duo clan were defeated by the scorpions and fiery demon poisonous mosquitoes. A few of the disciples were left with only a pile of bones. The Duo clan leader couldn't help but tremble. He turned around and shouted at the Dragon clan leader, "When will they be here?" Long Qian glared at the Duo clan leader. "Why are you so anxious?" "I'm more anxious than you are." The Duo clan leader had only mobilized half of their elite disciples. As for the Dragon clan, they had mobilized all of their clansmen. Basically, all of them were here. It could be said that the entire Dragon clan had turned out in full force. When the nest is overturned, no egg can remain intact. Long Qian coldly glared at the head of the Duo family. "What good would it do for me to lie to you? You and I will form an alliance and fight against Tianyun. That is a sure thing. If I plot against the Duo family and cause them to die, what benefits will I get? How could I not understand the logic of a single tree being unable to support a tree? In the entire river of forgetfulness, our two great clans are linked together. We can't cast anyone aside." Hearing this, the Duo clan leader knew that the Dragon clan leader was right. His heart calmed down a little. Just now, he suspected that the Dragon clan's patriarch had tricked him and tricked his people into coming here to die. Now that he heard Long Qian's words, he felt a little better. However, he was still extremely anxious. The Duo clan leader smiled awkwardly at Long Qian and quickly said, "You used a secret technique to summon the 13th elder, but if the heavenly Tao stopped you, how could they pass? Have you heard of the God-inviting talisman?" "You used the God-inviting talisman?" "No, we used a secret technique." The Dragon clan leader looked at the Duo clan leader coldly. "Do you think I'm lying to you? Didn't I tell you before?" Chapter 4702. Duo Chang coughed awkwardly. I don't know. Dragon clan leader, why don't you just tell me whether the 13th elder can come or not? This secret technique of yours is it reliable?" Long Qian glanced at Duo Chang coldly. She now had reason to doubt whether Duo Chang could be a qualified partner with his IQ. He was simply stupid. This secret technique can only be used once in 100 years. This is our Dragon clan's secret, so I naturally can't tell you how to use it. In fact, there was a huge price to pay after using this secret technique. First of all, as the clan leader, her body would rapidly deteriorate in just a few days, and there was no way to save her. Second, if the summoning was successful, the 13th elder could only stay in the 3 continents for no more than 2 hours. Finally, if the summoning was unsuccessful as the summoner, Long Qian would directly suffer a powerful backlash from the heavenly Tao and be killed on the spot. As the summoner, Long Qian knew very well that the summoning was successful. The 13th elder would definitely come, but for some reason, they hadn't appeared yet. "I'm not doing this for myself," Long Qian said to herself when she summoned the 13th elder. "I'm doing this for the future of the Dragon clan and to create a powerful Dragon clan." Although she might not be able to see the Dragon clan prosper in the future, she felt that the bright future was right in front of her. She could almost see it waving at her. Since the God-inviting talisman can summon people from the holy region, our secret technique doesn't go against the heavenly Tao. Duo Chang heard the Dragon clan leader say this to himself. Joy and excitement immediately appeared in Duo Chang's eyes. But he was quickly defeated by the reality in front of him. The overwhelming number of sand scorpions had already killed many of the Duo Chang clansmen. Duo Chang was anxious and urged the Dragon clan leader, "Why don't you use your secret technique to urge them? I think the enemy's firepower is really strong." Duo Chang's heart was in a mess. He wanted to know if the Dragon clan leader had any tricks up her sleeve. The 13th elder is probably having a hard time dealing with those transcendent state experts around her. Can we take down that little stoic? Why not? There was a strange look in Long Qian's eyes. As if she could see the little stoic's future, as well as her tribe's future, sparks of joy danced in her eyes, alternating clearly and secretly. She already had a foolproof plan. Even if Arbor summoned the holy beast demonic dragon, she still had the power to resist it. "Everyone, stay close and defend. Get into a defensive formation and follow me." Long Qian was the first to release a surge of saint energy, surrounding the few people around him. The green branch scepter in his hand suddenly emitted a brilliant light. As if it could split the heavens and earth, it charged towards the group of sand scorpions ahead. After a loud bang, the beach was split open and a white mark was formed. Duo Chang's eyes flashed, and he suddenly turned to look at the Dragon Clan's patriarch. How could this be? The Dragon Clan leader's cultivation had always been on par with his. They were both mystique venerable rank cultivators. But looking at her now, it seemed as if she had suddenly advanced to the next level, and somehow reached the peak of the spiritual elder realm? How could he improve so quickly? Why did it feel like the Dragon Clan's clan leader was on steroids? Chapter 4703. With the Dragon Clan's patriarch leading the way, they blasted open a gap in the sand scorpions. 5,000 to 6,000 elite disciples from the two great families of Forgotten River bravely moved forward and fought with the members of the Heavenly Fate Alliance from afar. Spiritual power flew around each other, and the 5 spirits of different colors formed a vortex in front of everyone, stirring the air in front of them. The sky darkened and pressed down. It was as if the entire sky was filled with darkness in an instant. Light and shadow flickered, and a figure appeared from the clouds. Duo Chang looked up, and his heart skipped a beat. The excitement on his face was indescribable. It's the 13th Elder. It was indeed the 13th Elder. They came extremely quickly, and in the blink of an eye, they descended from the clouds. These 13 elders were all elders of the Forgotten River Dragon Clan who had ascended to the Holy Region. Everyone's face was filled with murderous intent. Long Qian also couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. He cupped his hands and bowed to one of the elders. "Elders, please help us deal with these people in front of us." As for the little stoic, she had her own place to belong. As long as all the Transcendent Realm experts around her were delayed, she would have a way to deal with this immature little brat. The 13 elders from the Holy Region basically didn't say a word. They quickly threw out sacred power attacks in the direction of Shengchen, Holy Sun Mi Yen, and the others. Only one of the elders who looked kind looked at Long Qian. After a long while, he said, "You are the current Dragon Clan's patriarch. Please forgive me, old ancestor." Long Qian bowed neither servile nor overbearing. "Because of family matters, I had no choice but to alarm old ancestor. It's Long Qian's fault." That elder waved his hand and sighed softly. "Since you are thinking for the future of our entire Dragon Clan, there is nothing to blame." However, why were there so many Transcendent Realm experts in this team of tens of thousands of people? Why were these Transcendent Realm experts not abandoned by the Heavenly Tao and ascended to the Holy Region? A strange premonition slid through the Dragon Clan's patriarch's heart, as if some unknown disaster was about to befall them. What kind of terrifying premonition was this? The elder of the Dragon Clan only felt a heavy haze in his heart. He thought that it would be better to quickly resolve the matter at hand and then hurry back to the sacred region. "Junior, how dare you be so impudent?" One of the Dragon Clan's ancestors shouted and swept his sleeve towards Qi Xianxian and the others. Seeing this, Holy Sun Mi Yen turned pale with fright and hurriedly pushed Qi Xianxian away. Turning around, he could only take the force of the old man's flick. The other party was obviously a hierarch expert. With a wave of his hand, Mi Yan's body was sent flying. "Lord Saint." Qi Xianxian and the rest were shocked, and they immediately chased after Mi Yan's flying figure. Arbor's pupils shrank, and he immediately released several saint beasts from the star field. At the same time, the Dragon Clan's ancestor who was talking to Long Qian earlier twitched his nose and turned around abruptly. The 13 ancestors of the dragon family all stared at Arbor. "You have the aura of a divine domain opening." This little girl with an ice-cold face and expressionless face from beginning to end was actually a child with great fortune? The aura of a divine domain opening just now was mysterious and attractive. It really made people look at her. Chapter 4704. Long Qian hurriedly stepped forward and respectfully said to the Dragon Clan's ancestor, "Elders, please deal with those people first. As for the rest, you can leave it to me." Once the 13 Dragon Clan elders whose cultivation bases were above the immortal Venerate realm joined the battle, the entire battle naturally changed drastically. Arbor looked coldly at Long Qian. He suddenly summoned his blood-marked demonic dragon with a flip of his hand and leaped onto the dragon's back. "He's here." Long Qian was overjoyed, and her eyes couldn't help but light up. "Jojo!" He Chen, who was currently being held back by an immortal venerate elder, hastily looked up at Arbor and hurriedly shouted, "Hurry and come back." If it weren't for the two the little white squirrel, and a few other sacred beasts holding the line and assisting He Chen and the others, they would have already been defeated. Of the 13 elders that had been summoned from the Holy Realm, only Shengchen and little Taisui were capable of fighting one of them. The other elders were besieged by the Peony Fairy, Dao Wuji, and the others in 2s and 3s. The members of the Heavenly Fate battle team were ordered to retreat. In front of these Transcendence Realm elders, they were mere God Realm cultivators and had no power at all. Meaningless sacrifices were not desirable, so retreating quickly was the best choice for them. This wasn't a failure. It was just that the disparity in strength was too great, so success or failure was an insignificant matter to them. Their ultimate goal was to preserve their lives with all their might. It's here. She finally took the bait. Long Qian's eyes flickered slightly as she watched the little stoic jump onto the black dragon and rapidly move toward her. She couldn't hide the smugness in her heart. Long Qian. Long Qian turned around and looked at her grandson. She lowered her voice and said, "Long Qian, you will be in charge of everything here from now on." Long Qian panicked for no reason and quickly asked, "Grandmother, where are you going?" "You don't have to worry about it," Long Qian said confidently. "No, grandmother." Long Qian quickly took a step forward with an anxious expression. He stared at Long Qian and said, "You promised me. You're only forcing Arbor to lend the shark pearl. You don't want to hurt her, do you?" Long Qian looked at her grandson with a complicated expression on her face. "Long Qian, don't be like your father. You won't be able to become a good leader just because you are soft-hearted." "No." Long Shi immediately panicked and shouted anxiously, "Grandmother, you lied to me. You promised me. You promised me that you wouldn't hurt her at all." "Grandmother, grandmother." Long Shangyun couldn't help but cry out in a trembling voice, "Stop it, grandmother, okay? She's not as strong as you think she is. If her heart is hurt by you again and again, this time, everything will be irreparable." Grandmother, actually, this stoic-faced person, her heart wasn't bad, it was just that her mouth was a bit venomous. But most of the time, she would stand in the other party's shoes and think about their difficulties. "Can't we discuss this with her properly?" Long Qian looked at her grandchildren with a crazed look in her eyes. "Long Qian, Shangyun, both of you have disappointed me. Long Qian, if you continue to be as indecisive as your father, you won't be able to make decisions. You won't be able to shoulder the responsibility of the Long family's future." "Grandmother." Chapter 4705. Long Shangyun didn't realize that she was already tearing up. She looked at the extremely old woman in front of her and pleaded, "Can we discuss this with the little stoic?" "Discuss it. She's actually someone who could be discussed and communicated with. At a time like this, there's no other choice. The arrow has already been knocked and must be released. Do you think there's any use in discussing it?" Long Qian wanted nothing more than to give her two grandsons a stern warning. They were truly too disappointing. Just like their father, their temperament was soft and powerless. That was why she had no choice but to sit in the clan head's position all these years and bitterly support the entire Dragon Clan. If they were capable enough, she would have given them the authority to manage the Dragon Clan's affairs long ago. Long Qian coldly watched as Arbor flew over. She suddenly turned around and swiftly swam towards the beach. She abruptly dove into the sea, and cries of "Clan head" resounded around her. When the little stoic saw this, she also put away her blood-patterned demonic dragon and dove into the sea. Long Qian wanted to compete with her in speed in the sea? That was a fool's dream. This time, she wanted to completely end the karmic conflict between her mother, herself, and the entire Long family of Wangshuan. "Grandmother, where are you going?" "Big brother." Long Shangyun tightly clenched her hands, and there was an inexplicable trace of fear on her face. She had an extremely bad premonition that was spinning rapidly in her heart. She even felt that although the world was bright right now in her eyes, it was pitch-black darkness that couldn't be dispelled. She panicked. She felt extremely flustered for no reason. It was as if a merciless disaster was about to befall the entire clan. Because of the Dragon Clan's clan head, her grandmother's obstinate and opinionated misjudgment, perhaps they would face a disaster that would wipe out the entire Wangchuan. Oh no. Long Huan abruptly snapped out of his daze and quickly ran towards the beach. As he ran, he tried his best to mutate his fishtail and hurriedly shouted, "Grandmother, stop, please stop." "Big brother, where are you going? Where are you going?" Long Shangyun chased after him in a panic and called out uneasily, "Big brother." "Shangyun, go back first." Long Huan's expression was extremely unsightly right now. "No, big brother, I want to go with you." Long Shangyun was unusually firm. What exactly does grandmother want to do? She's leading the little stoic to the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Long Qian wailed miserably, and his fishtail swayed as if he couldn't even swim steadily. The color on Long Shangyun's face quickly faded. The abyss of the sacrificial sea was where the mermen gathered to offer sacrifices to the souls of the heroes in the sea. According to legend, the Merfolk royal clan's patriarch was able to summon a mysterious force from the sacrificial sea's abyss and use it. "Grandmother, you want to?" Long Shangyun's small face was pale, and her lips trembled continuously. He wants to use that mysterious power from the abyss of the sacrificial sea to strip the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl from the little stoic's body. "No!" Long Shi roared angrily. He quickly slid into the sea and swam towards the bottom of the sea. Grandmother had promised him that she wouldn't harm the little stoic. Grandmother had promised him. Grandmother's heart was just as the little stoic had said. Sure enough, she was so ruthless. Even his own granddaughter could be dealt with in such a way. She lied to him. She had been lying to him from the very beginning, because she never intended to let the little stoic off from the start. Chapter 4706. Grandmother actually believed in the legend of the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Did she really believe him? Grandmother wanted to summon the mysterious power in the abyss of the sacrificial sea to strip the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl from the little stoic. How was that possible? The mermaid pearl had already merged with the little stoic. If grandmother wanted to strip the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl from the little stoic's body, then she didn't care about her life at all. Long Qian closed her eyes and sank into the sea. She instantly felt the ice-cold seawater wrap around her. His body could feel a sudden cold aura approaching from afar. This area of the sea was connected to the merfolk's most ancient place to offer sacrifices to the heroic souls in the sea. Normally, no one would go to that place. The closer she got to the abyss of the sacrificial sea, the more she could feel a sinister and cold aura following the current. Arbor pursed her lips and swam extremely quickly. She was about to catch up to Long Qian in the blink of an eye. She shot out several icicles from her fingertips and swam forward rapidly, stabbing toward Long Qian's back. Long Qian already felt this power attacking her from behind. She quickly swung her fishtail and scuttled forward. However, even though she was fast, Arbor's icicles were even faster. In the blink of an eye, the icicles had already caught up to her and stabbed into her back. Long Qian narrowed her eyes and formed a defensive barrier around her, blocking all the icicles the little stoic threw at her. "Grandmother!" Long Qian anxiously chased after her. However, his speed couldn't compare to the little stoic and Long Qian's. He was a full 3,000 to 4,000 meters away from them. Long Qian turned around and glanced at Arbor. "You can't hurt me, Mu Qiao." As soon as she said that, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the sea. Less than 100 meters away from her, a giant white snake suddenly emerged from the whirlpool. It opened its mouth and surrounded her with a ball of black mist. Long Qian was startled, and her expression abruptly changed. She saw that this little girl had summoned many sacred beasts and left them there to help kill the Heavenly Fate battle team and resist the 13th Elder together. Now that they were in the sea, that fire-breathing black dragon clearly wasn't suitable for it to stay in a place surrounded by water spirit energy. The little stoic had recalled the black dragon long ago. Long Qian never thought that she would be able to summon a white snake saint beast. If it wasn't for the fact that it was a critical moment, Long Qian really wished that she could ask the little stoic where exactly did she get so many sacred beasts? It was simply inconceivable for a single person to have so many saint beasts by his side. Arbor didn't bother with Long Qian. He didn't even bother to look at her as he reminded the little white snake to be careful. Arbor began to take out talismans from afar. Countless water talismans formed an array and flew towards Long Qian. Long Qian gritted her teeth. She raised her green scepter and broke many of the talismans. He knew that he could not continue to dawdle. This little stoic's tricks were simply endless. If she continued to dawdle with her here, God knows if she would have any more unexpected tricks up her sleeve. The top priority now was to lure this stoic man to the entrance of the abyss in the sacrificial sea as soon as possible. As long as she was within the range of the sacrificial sea abyss, she could, grandmother. Long Qian shouted loudly from afar. When his voice entered Long Qian's ears, she couldn't help but frown, and her expression instantly turned ugly. Chapter 4707. Long Hua, this brat, was getting more and more useless as he grew older. She already told him to stay up there and command the battle. Why did he follow her? As the heir of the Long family, he always acted on his emotions, which made Long Qian very disappointed. He was just like his father, indecisive and didn't know what to do. How could he be the future of the dragon clan of forgetfulness? Long Qian pursed her lips and remained silent. She was getting more and more anxious as she led Arbor deeper into the abyss. Both of them were extremely fast. When Long Qian realized that they were getting further and further away, her eyes were bloodshot. She couldn't help but shout, "Jojo, don't go. The power of the abyss isn't something you can fight against alone." That was the power of ancient techniques, the power of nature. It was impossible for a human to fight against it. When Arbor heard Long Hua's shout, she frowned and hesitated for a moment. Now, she could tell that Long Qian was clearly trying to lure her to a place alone. Right now, she should retreat quickly to ensure her safety. It wouldn't do her any good to follow them. Long Qian turned around and saw that Arbor had stopped moving. Her heart couldn't help but skip a beat. She knew that this wasn't good. This little stoic seemed to be on her guard. It was all Long Hua's fault. He couldn't do anything right. How could he be so emotional? Once he shouted, everything would be ruined in his hands. Long Qian thought about it and smiled coldly at Arbor. "Are you afraid?" Long Qian. Xiao Mu gazed at her icily and declared, "Clumsy goading is completely useless against me. Do you think that I chased you here because I was impulsive? What do you mean?" Long Qian couldn't help but turn around and look at her. She felt that this little girl's exquisite and beautiful face looked a little sinister when she looked at her through the water. Especially when she didn't need the water-repellent pearl or a fishtail and could breathe freely in the sea. Her face couldn't help but twitch. There was no one else in the entire Long family who could breathe freely in the sea and wander around like her. It was supposed to be her successor, Long Chuyu's ability. Then, he would borrow Long Chuyu to pass it down generation after generation, bringing their entire forgetful river dragon family to greater heights. Shui Yuan's prediction was good. Without the 10,000-year mermaid pearl, the forgetful river dragon clan would lose their future and be drowned in the torrent of history as time passed. The current forgetful river dragon clan was getting worse with each generation. The merfolk race could not bear such a decline. At the very least, it couldn't continue to decline in her hands. "What are you trying to say?" Long Qian had a bad feeling about this. She knew that the little stoic was intelligent, but how could a young lady like her know her plans in advance? Very few people knew the secret of the sacrificial sea abyss. Only her successor, Long Huan, who was also the candidate for the next head of the family, would occasionally hear about it. Long Xie, this brat, was really incapable of accomplishing anything but good at spoiling things. Long Qian gritted his teeth and turned to Arbor. "What other tricks do you have? Just use it all at once. You know, with your current realm, you can't hurt me at all." As soon as Long Qian finished speaking, she realized that golden talismans were rising from the water around her. Chapter 4708. Even though Long Qian didn't know anything about talismans, she still had a good eye. She knew that these golden talismans were the rare sacred-grade golden talismans that were hard to find. Normally, it was hard to even see a sacred-grade golden talisman. Even in underground auctions and black markets, it was hard to find a sacred-grade golden talisman. But now, Long Qian realized that she was surrounded by a ring of sacred-grade golden talismans. Sacred-grade golden water talismans? Long Qian couldn't help but hold her breath. There were at least 10 sacred-grade golden water talismans in front of her. If all of them exploded at the same time, the power would be Long Qian's pupils shrank. She quickly turned around and escaped into the sea. She even let out an angry roar. It was as if she was urging herself to speed up, but it was also as if she was panicking and running away. She swung her fishtail and dashed forward a few hundred meters like an arrow. She was so fast that it was dizzying. But even with such speed, it was impossible for her to stop the pursuit of dozens of sacred-grade golden water talismans. These talismans chased after her, and together with the hundreds of talismans that Arbor had thrown out, they formed a huge talisman array. There were 60 purple talismans and hundreds of blue talismans. These water spirit talismans gathered together and formed a huge water spirit talisman formation. They fluttered in the air and surrounded Long Qian. It took a long time for the talismans to surround Long Qian, but it all happened in a matter of minutes. It didn't even take a second for the talismans to be activated and for the talismans to be released. The array shook violently at the bottom of the sea. Everyone who was fighting hard near the beach was startled by the loud tremor. Whether it was the members of the Tianyun team or the 13th Elder, they all looked in the direction of the sea. At this moment, there was a whirlpool that was spinning rapidly on the surface of the sea. It was boiling and spinning as if it was trying to suck in all the living creatures in the sea. Even the ground near the beach was affected by the tremors, and the ground began to shake vigorously. With such a huge commotion, everyone couldn't help but feel a little worried. Qi Xianxian and the others all had worried expressions on their faces. Jojo was fighting with Long Qian at the bottom of the ocean, and no one knew if he was at a disadvantage. Although she had the blood-patterned demonic dragon by her side, the demonic dragon was of the fire attribute. Naturally, it would not be able to perform well in the sea that was surrounded by water spirits. Even if she still had the little white snake by her side, it could protect her at a critical moment. But he couldn't be sure that Long Qian wasn't plotting something. Previously, she had lured Jojo into that sea because she wanted to hide her secret. Meanwhile, under the impact of the Saint-grade golden talisman's talisman energy, the entire seabed shook as if there was an earthquake. Long Qian's face was ghastly pale as he spat out a mouthful of blood. He quickly took out a bottle of medicinal liquid from his inner world and poured it into his mouth. She murmured as if she was chanting some ancient curse. The expression on her face was twisted and bizarre. She concentrated on reciting the words, her eyes shining with a resolute light. Her voice grew louder and louder. Arbor couldn't understand a word she said. However, she could feel that the seawater around her body was like boiling water, gradually heating up and slowly boiling. Boom! There was a loud explosion. A crack suddenly appeared in the depths of the sea, and a huge hole appeared. Chapter 4709. Cries and screams came from the abyss and pierced Jojo's eardrums. Summon Ghost Talisman, activate. Arbor's cold eyes were filled with murderous intent. As he threw out a sacred-grade Summon Ghost Talisman, he ordered, kill the leader of the Wangchuan dragon family, now. Long Huan, who was rushing over, had a trace of anxiety in the depths of his eyes. Jojo! Grandmother! Why did his grandmother insist on fighting with Qiao Qiao to the point where they would not rest until one of them died? Couldn't they just get along? Long Qian's face twisted with pleasure. She turned to look at Arbor and screamed, no one can resist the power of the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Her abdomen, sternum, face, and arms all suffered heavy blows. She couldn't help but cry out involuntarily. Suddenly, it was as if a huge invisible force was grabbing onto his throat. Long Qian's face turned pale. She struggled to make a sound, but all she could do was watch as her feet left the ground. It was as if there was an invisible person in front of her who was grabbing her by the throat and lifting her off the ground with one hand. What kind of terrifying force was this? Summon Ghost Talisman? What was that? How many trump cards did Mu Qiao have that she hadn't used yet? She had already reached the spiritual supreme realm. Why was she still being held down by this little girl who was only at the 5th level of the immortal state? Grandmother! Long Shangyun swam through the water and came closer. She was shocked when she saw Long Qian in this state. Long Huan felt a dry and faint taste of blood in the depths of his throat. He couldn't speak. In fact, after the abyss of the sacrificial sea was opened, the water around them was boiling. Even the cultivators above the immortal state felt suffocated. It was as if there was a layer of lava in the water. The flowing water in the surroundings was like boiling water, bubbling and bubbling. Arbor looked at Long Qian, who was being held by the ghost spirit, expressionlessly. His eyes were cold and ruthless. "Odo, let's talk nicely. Jojo." Long Yen looked at Arbor with fear in his eyes and tried to persuade him, "You can't kill grandmother. She's also your grandmother. Jojo, you can't do this. I know that you're suffering, but you're a girl. How can you bear the infamy of killing your own grandmother? Jojo, please let her go. I promise, after this incident, grandmother will never." "Damn liar," Arbor interrupted Long Huan with a cold expression. "What do you have to guarantee that?" Long Huan couldn't help but shudder slightly when he met her gaze. It was a look of extreme distrust. Jojo would never trust him again. She called him a liar and would never trust him again. Yes, he was the one who had destroyed her trust with his own hands. Long Qian's eyes were filled with anger. She couldn't open her mouth to speak, and she could only make some noises from her throat. Long Shangyun felt that her body was burning. She looked down and saw that the skin on her arm had been burned red by the boiling water. It was as if they were standing on top of a volcano. Chapter 47:10. Every breath she took was filled with a burning aura. Due to the purifying power of the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl, Xiaomu was born unable to see ghost spirits. Hence, she didn't know how powerful the ghost spirit she summoned with this ghost summoning talisman was. She could only tell from Long Qian's pained expression that the ghost spirit could suppress Long Qian. A mocking look flashed past her eyes. Long Qian saw it. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but her neck was being held by the ghost spirit, so she couldn't say anything. She could hear the creaking sound of her neck bones. It had not been broken yet, probably because she had gathered all of her saint energy around her neck to protect this slim chance of survival. "Grandmother!" Long Shangyun called out anxiously. She opened her mouth, but when she saw Arbor's expression, it was as if there was a bone stuck in her throat. She couldn't say anything. "Kill her," Arbor ordered coldly. Instead of calling this woman her grandmother, it was better to call her the enemy who killed her mother. It was her. It was because of this old woman's cruelty that her mother was pushed to her death. It was her. It was her who made her mother lose the will to live. It was her. It was her who made her mother suffer an indescribable blow before she died. She didn't deserve to be a mother. She said that everything was for the future of the Long family. Why did you have to sacrifice Long Chuyun's happiness in exchange for the future of the Long family? Long Chuyun deserved it. Really? No, no. Long Qian screamed. He really didn't want Jojo to go down the path of killing his ancestors. It was too tragic to bear such a fate. She would be condemned by everyone for the rest of her life. She didn't deserve such a fate, Mu Qiao. Long Qian, who was struggling on the verge of death, screamed. "You will pay an unbearable price for what you have done today. The abyss of the sacrificial sea will take everything away from you." Long Qian screamed. She could clearly hear the cracking sound of her neck bones. What little saint power she had left was not enough to protect herself. However, at this moment, from the crack in the abyss of the sacrificial sea, a strand of bone-piercing coldness that penetrated one's heart gushed out with a bang. Under the support of this chill, its cracks suddenly seemed to be torn apart from the middle by a force. There was a loud noise. Arbor looked down subconsciously. The boiling seawater in the surroundings surged into the crevice. In the depths of the abyss, the shadow of a glacier appeared, giving people an indescribable visual shock. This was the true abyss of the sacrificial sea. Over the years, the Dragon Clan had offered sacrifices to the souls of their fallen heroes. Long Huan's gaze seemed to be glued to the glacier at the bottom of the sea. A strong sense of foreboding rose in his heart. "Jojo! Get out of there!" Long Xie couldn't help but shout. Excitement flashed through Long Qian's eyes, and from her dying lips, she began to chant a series of incantations. Activate the irreversible power of the sacrificial sea abyss. Take back the Millennium Mermaid Pearl of the Dragon Clan. Xiao Mu abruptly sensed an invisible giant palm grabbing her waist. Her body swayed a few times, and a cold, murderous aura appeared on her face. Chapter 47:11. This huge force was dragging her down at an extremely fast speed towards the glacier in the abyss of the sacrificial sea. "Xiao Xiao!" Long Huan instinctively pounced over and grabbed her wrist. However, compared to the power of the abyss of the sacrificial sea, his strength was far too weak. His entire body was being dragged down towards the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Long Qian felt the grip on her neck loosen, and the force that was strangling her suddenly stopped. She was elated, and she quickly took out some ointment from her inner world and applied it on her neck. The strong ghost spirit had already let go of her. At this moment, it had no time to care about Long Qian as it rushed to save its little master. Although Long Qian was relieved, her neck was already broken, and she was well aware of the situation. If it wasn't for the sacred medicine that could reconnect bones and tendons, she wouldn't have been able to escape death. Although she would probably die, as long as she could get the Millennium-Old Mermaid's pearl back for the Long family, she would be able to die in peace. Long Qian had a smile on her lips, but when she shifted her gaze over and saw Long Huan, who had not let go of Xiao Mu, her expression froze. Long Huan was becoming more and more disobedient. If he were to let his emotions affect his decisions, he might end up losing his life as well. "Let go," Arbor said to Long Huan calmly. Long Huan could not change the speed of her fall even if he tried to pull her. Instead, he had lost his life for nothing. It was useless. Arbor glanced at him indifferently. Even though Long Qian was clamoring for her to be taken away, her body didn't feel the slightest bit of discomfort. The mermaid's pearl was still in her body. That enormous power also made her feel a little strange. Although it was holding on to her tightly, it didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Could it be that the huge force in the abyss of the sacrificial sea was one of the 3 special abilities in heaven and earth, the power of deprivation? It was obvious that the power of deprivation didn't feel any disharmony with the force in her body. It was as if she was born with it and could blend in perfectly. Which was why, in fact, Arbor wasn't as flustered as Long Qian thought. She did not panic at all. She even had the mood to casually glance at Long Huan. Long Huan suddenly jumped out and grabbed her tightly at the critical moment of life and death. She was surprised. She did not expect that she still had some brotherly affection for her. With a fling of her hand, Xiao Mu flung away Long Huan, who was holding onto her with a death grip. Her face was still expressionless, and her words were icy. "You won't die." "Jojo!" Long Lu called out in shock. At this time, Long Shangyun had also rushed to her brother's side and hurriedly reached out to support his continuously retreating figure. "Brother." She raised her head to look in the little stoic's direction. She seemed to be bound by an invisible force. She was suspended above the glacier at the bottom of the sea, unable to move her hands and feet. Arbor felt a bit mysterious at this moment. His entire body felt like it was soaking in a milk bath, and he inexplicably felt that his Dantian star domain was very comfortable. A strange power was slowly flowing into her Dantian. She didn't know why, but she knew that this force would not harm her. At this moment, Little Tree's surprised voice rang in her mind. "Little Master, this is the power of deprivation, right?" Chapter 47:12. Little Master was really as expected. She was a relative of the Tendo family. She was clearly lured to the sacrificial sea abyss by someone who wanted to use the mysterious power of the sacrificial sea abyss to take away the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl in her body. In the end, he didn't expect that this power of deprivation would be so gentle as to enter his little master's body, inexplicably fusing with her. This is really hilarious. It had to be said that little master was probably born and raised by the heavens. She was lucky everywhere. Arbor didn't know what Chiyo was thinking. She only felt that after the powerful power of deprivation from the sacrificial sea abyss entered her body, her original power of deprivation quickly increased. This was an extremely exaggerated method of improvement. Although this fellow was muddle-headed, he was still able to sense the changes in his Dantian star domain immediately. Take the original power of deprivation for example. She could only deprive others of their inner world and later on, it would increase to their bones and blood. But now, she had a feeling that she could deprive the origin of the 5 spirits. Of course, this might just be an illusion. It was because of the power of deprivation that gave her this feeling. If she didn't put it into practice, she would never know her true feelings. Arbor suddenly opened her eyes, and a cold light flashed through her eyes. Long Qian, who was standing not far away and was slightly swaying, immediately felt her cold gaze. Her heart tightened, and she turned to look in Arbor's direction. A quarter of an hour had passed. Why hadn't the mysterious power in the sacrificial sea abyss removed the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl from Mu Qiao's body? Could it be the mermaid pearl had absorbed this power? Long Qian looked at Arbor suspiciously. Her neck was so stiff that she couldn't turn around. It was as if she turned her head would fall off her neck. This made her uncomfortable, and she didn't dare to make any excessive movements. Jojo! Long Qian let out a sigh of relief. Seeing Arbor floating in the air and nothing unexpected had happened after so long, he knew that she must have resisted the mysterious power in the sacrificial sea abyss. He and his sister, Long Shangyun, already knew about Arbor's abilities on the way to the River of Forgetfulness. This little cousin of his had a lot of secrets, and Long Huan had always known about them. He even knew that his little cousin had even more secrets that no one knew about. She had many trump cards that she had yet to reveal. Therefore, even the two of them did not know what she would do next. Although her grandmother's cultivation level was much higher than hers, it was useless. This little cousin of his had always been someone who could create miracles. Just like now, no one could be as calm and expressionless as the Dragon Clan's clan leader after activating the power of the sacrificial sea abyss. Long Qian was shocked as well. She didn't understand what was going on. Why didn't the power of the sacrificial sea have any effect on this stoic face? Didn't it rob her of the 10,000-year mermaid pearl? If he didn't take it away, how was she going to get the shark pearl back? How to baptize the many clansmen? How to save the snowland? How to continue the excellent bloodline? She had done so much not for herself, but for the bloodline of the forgotten River Dragon clan. Long Qian could feel the pain in her neck, and she couldn't help but raise her head slightly. Chapter 47:13. However, the feeling of her neck being broken in half was too painful, so she couldn't raise her head at all. The seawater around them had reached an extremely high boiling point and was churning non-stop in front of their eyes. Long Qian could feel the scorching heat waves hitting her in the face. This feeling made her a little uncomfortable. Long Shangyun's small face was also roasted red by the scorching heat waves, and her breathing was scorching hot. This place was getting hotter and hotter. It was so hot that it felt extremely strange. After all, they could clearly see the glacier entrance to the abyss of the sacrificial sea below them. This glacier and the magma-like seawater were clearly separated and existed at the same time. The glacier didn't melt from the scorching seawater. The boiling seawater wasn't watered by the glacier's chilling aura either. This strange combination of cold and hot, one ice and one fire, surprised many of the people present. The siblings, Long Ji and Long Shangyun, had never seen such a scene before. To them, this place was extremely strange and bizarre. Arbor suddenly moved her limbs but couldn't break free. At this moment, she was still suspended at the glacier entrance of the abyss of the sacrificial sea, neither moving up nor down. However, Long Qian finally saw through some clues. Under the little stoic's feet, a mysterious force gushed out of the ice cave entrance to the abyss of the sacrificial sea, but it didn't attack Mu Qiao or her. Otherwise, that mysterious force wouldn't have allowed Mu Qiao, that girl, to stay here unharmed until now. It would have stripped the mermaid pearl from her body long ago and swallowed her body into the ice cave, right? Although she didn't know what was going on, Long Qian already realized that her granddaughter most likely had another trump card in her hand. What exactly was that trump card? Long Qian couldn't figure it out, but she already had a thought to quickly leave this place. She had to leave this place. Once the little stoic regained her mobility, she would definitely order that ghost spirit to continue killing her. She couldn't die in this abyss of the sacrificial sea before she obtained the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. Absolutely not. Long Qian's eyes shifted slightly, and she was about to retreat. Suddenly, she felt a strong pinch on her arm. Ah! Grandmother! Long Qian and Long Shangyun turned around and hastily called out. Naturally, they could see the ghost spirit shrouded in black mist. Arbor used his divine sense to order Guiling to imprison Long Qian. Now that things had come to this, she would never allow Long Qian, that shrew, to leave this place alive. Today either she or she would die. As long as this old woman had the slightest bit of affection for her, she wouldn't be so heartless. She lured her to the abyss of the sacrificial sea with the intention of killing her. If Arbor was an incompetent person, he would have already died in the land of forgetfulness. Arbor's eyes flashed with coldness. She was the one who wanted to continue her mother's life. No one had the right to make Arbor die. Long Qian opened her mouth in shock. Suddenly, she felt a strange yet powerful force enveloping her body. That unusually ferocious and mysterious power abruptly and directly charged towards her dantian. Long Qian's heart skipped a beat as fear flashed through her eyes. What was she trying to do? This little stoic, what was she trying to do? Long Qian was still begging for mercy when he saw his grandmother's face contorting in an extremely strange manner. Chapter 47:14. Long Qian's forehead was drenched in cold sweat as she shrieked, You, ugh. It was too painful. It was too painful. This kind of pain seemed to extend from his bones and blood vessels, and it carried an indescribable feeling of pain. Long Qian was completely stunned, but her arm was tightly gripped by Gui Ling, so she couldn't move at all. She could only endure it. Long Shangyun and Long Qian were also shocked. They couldn't tell what kind of pain Long Qian was enduring from her skin, but they knew very well that the little stoic was starting to retaliate. Qiao, Arbor, Long Shangyun said while trembling with fear. Can you? She wanted to ask her to let her grandmother off for the sake of Long Chuyun's aunt. But when she thought about what her grandmother did to Long Chuyun's aunt, she suddenly felt that she couldn't bring herself to say it. Arbor only glanced at Long Shangyun indifferently before retracting her gaze. A sharp spark danced in her eyes as she stared at Long Qian with a cold and bright gaze. After a while, she asked, How do you feel? Long Qian was in so much pain that she couldn't speak. The sweat on her forehead fell like a waterfall. This kind of pain that came from the depths of her bones wasn't as simple as the pain on her skin. The most terrifying thing was that Long Qian could faintly feel that a once powerful force was being forcefully extracted from her body. Long Qian screamed with all her might as she struggled with all her might. As soon as she moved, she felt that something was wrong with her body. She couldn't feel the water spirit force in her body while she was struggling? How could this be? How could the water spirit not exist? The origins of the 5 spirits were something that every cultivator who successfully entered the realm of Spirit Master had to comprehend. It was impossible for a cultivator to lose the power of the 5 spirits. It was impossible. Long Qian's eyes widened in shock as she shook her head and screamed, No, it can't be. She must be scaring herself. How could her 9th layer of spiritual water disappear? That was the water spirit force that she had comprehended. Arbor stared at Long Qian coldly, and his voice was as cold as ice. Now you know how it feels to be taken away by someone else. How does that feel? The grandfather and granddaughter trio looked at Xiao Mu in shock. As if they couldn't understand what she was saying, The 3 pairs of eyes stared at her blankly. Arbor could not break free from the shackles of the sacrificial sea abyss. She still stayed in front of the glacier entrance, but her eyes were much clearer than before. She stared at Long Qian, and Long Qian stared back at her. Their gazes almost collided in midair, causing sparks to fly. Long Qian looked at the little stoic girl, and her heart shuddered for no reason. There was a type of coldness called bone-piercing coldness, and Long Qian was probably experiencing it now. She hated her. This little stoic probably already hated her to death. "What did you do to me? Arbor, what did you do to me?" At this moment, Long Qian felt as if her voice came from the other side of the world, and it made her hair stand on end. That hoarse voice with a hint of hysteria and sadness actually belonged to her? The leader of the Iron Blood tribe, who used to be so high-spirited and had never been soft-hearted when leading the Long family, now had a terrified expression on her face. Chapter 47:15. Perhaps she simply didn't realize that one wrong step would lead to another. One day, she, the dignified patriarch of the Forgotten River Dragon clan, would actually fall into such a predicament. Arbor was expressionless. His gaze shifted to the Dragon clan's patriarch as he said indifferently with a mocking expression, "I just want you to personally experience what kind of feeling is called deprivation. Didn't you want to disregard my wishes and deprive me of the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl in my body? Didn't you want to take the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl for yourself? No matter how nicely you make it sound, you're still trying to murder me without regard for your own family. It's like this to Mother, and it's also like this to me. Could it be that this mother and daughter pair were born to owe the Forgotten River Dragon clan a huge debt and had to repay it the moment they were born? How does it feel to be deprived?" Arbor coolly glanced at the Dragon clan's patriarch as he asked indifferently. The Dragon clan's patriarch's wrinkled old face was instantly filled with resentment and unquenchable emotions. "Arbor, you..." Long Qian was so angry that she couldn't speak. Even the words, "little bastard," that she wanted to say were stuck in her throat due to the immense pain. She was in pain, in too much pain. This pain originated from the fear and despair in the depths of her bones and blood. Very quickly, the raging fury that she had just accumulated was suppressed by a deep sense of fear. She had felt it. She had truly felt it. Her water spirit, her 9th layer of spirit water, was currently being forcefully extracted from her body by that terrifying deprivation power. No, she couldn't do this. She simply didn't know what would happen to a transcendent realm cultivator after they lost their water spirit. Would their cultivation decrease along with it? Or would they merely lose the power of their water spirit? She couldn't use this power in the future. Or would she lose her cultivation after falling from a tall building to the bottom? She didn't know. This kind of fear of the unknown caused people to involuntarily sink into despair. Long Qian suppressed an inexplicable panic that was difficult to suppress in her eyes. She hastily turned to look at the little stoic and shouted angrily, "Stop, stop. What do you want to do? Mu Qiao. Don't forget that I'm still your grandmother." Arbor couldn't help but sneer. He hovered above the entrance of the sacrificial sea and coldly stared at the shouting dragon patriarch. Not only was Long Qian stubborn and self-opinionated, she was also hilarious. At this point, she still had the face to claim kinship with her? What were you doing in the first place? You can't do that. Long Qian screamed at the top of her lungs as she screamed at Arbor, "Mu Qiao, I'm your grandmother. You can't take away my water spirit power. No, Arbor didn't give her a chance to continue talking nonsense. At this moment, the layer of deprivation power that had fused into her body was continuously pouring in, gradually filling her Dantian star field. This power was too domineering and powerful, so much so that she had a feeling that it was difficult to grasp. Now, she could only slowly get used to it and use it more often. Long Qian let out a shrill scream. Her body suddenly fell limply to the ground, and a hot current enveloped her body. She shivered from the heat and tilted her neck slightly to the side as she screamed in pain. Grandmother. Long Shangyun swam a dozen meters forward in trepidation and reached out to catch the dispirited Long Qian. However, Long Qian rushed forward first and supported the deathly pale dragon patriarch. He hastily asked, "Grandmother, what happened to you?" Chapter 47:16. To be honest, Long Huan and his sister didn't know what was going on even after watching for a long time. However, when they heard the little stoic say, "How does it feel to be deprived?" their hearts were vaguely stirred. Could it be that the little stoic used some strange power on grandmother and deprived her of something inside her body? However, grandmother was only a normal cultivator and didn't have a mermaid pearl inside her body. What did the little stoic deprive her of? Long Qian's entire body was soaked in seawater. Her defensive barrier had long disappeared without her noticing. Long Qian's entire body was listless, and her hair was wet from the seawater and drooped on her face. Her fishtail drooped heavily, and her face was lifeless. Long Huan clenched his fists and looked in the little stoic's direction, unable to restrain his anger. What did you do to grandmother? You're too ruthless." Long Shangyun hastily tugged at him. Speaking of Long Huan, he was truly an extremely contradictory person. Previously, when he found out that grandmother wanted to kill Arbor, he truly lamented in his heart. To be honest, the little stoic only had a terrible temper and was a bit of a con man, but she didn't have a bad heart. When grandmother wanted to kill the little stoic, he naturally objected to it 1,000 times over. But now, it was the other way around. When he saw his grandmother, whom he had always respected, lying in the crook of his arms on the verge of death, he couldn't help but resent the little stoic in his heart for being too ruthless and not knowing her limits. Therefore, it could be said that Long Huan was a contradictory and indecisive person. Whenever he encountered a problem, he would waver. The little stoic had interacted with the siblings for a long time, so she believed that she understood their temperaments. Now that she saw his expression, although she didn't think much of it, she wasn't very angry. This person was just like that because of his temperament. How bad could he be? That wasn't necessarily the case. How good could he be? That wasn't necessarily the case either. This fellow was born in a peaceful era, so he was rather suitable to be an idle young master who tended to flowers and plants. If he really had to shoulder the future of a certain family, with his wavering temperament, it wasn't that Arbor was looking down on him, but it really wasn't too suitable. In the face of the little stoics, "I'm too lazy to pay attention to you," gaze, young Master Long simply had nowhere to vent his anger. He reached out to support the Dragon Clan leader who had already fainted, and hurriedly took out 2 pills and stuffed them into her mouth. "Let's end this matter here," Long Qi said coldly. "Grandmother was in the wrong first, but now, you are paying her back in her own coin. You are paying her back in full." His voice abruptly stopped. Suddenly, she saw her grandmother release a soul-sealing arrow from between her fingers, shooting it straight at Xiaomu. Long Huan's eyes widened and his handsome face contorted. He pushed the old woman away and shouted, "Grandmother! Grandmother!" The blood drained from Long Shangyun's face in an instant. Grandmother actually released the treasure of the forgetful River Dragon clan, the soul-locking arrow? What kind of deep hatred did grandmother have with the stoic face that she would actually release a holy weapon like the soul-locking arrow? She wanted to obliterate Xiao Mu's body and soul. Once he was hit by the soul-locking arrow, Arbor's soul would completely disappear from this world, and it would be irreparable. Long Qian had opened his eyes at some point, and his hair was disheveled as he guffawed like a madman. Chapter 47:17. If I knew this day would come, I wouldn't have given birth to your mother. I even raised a little bastard like you. Long Qian glared at Arbor in shock and shouted harshly. Back then, Long Chuyun and Long Chuyu entered the Dragon Clan's sacred ground together. Chuyu came back covered in wounds, but your mother obtained the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. How can there be nothing fishy about this? Your mother knows best what she did. Long Qian coughed out mouthfuls of blood, and she looked like she had gone mad. She didn't have long to live anyway, and her body couldn't support her anymore. Moreover, after losing the 9th layer of the spiritual water, she could already feel that her cultivation was dissipating bit by bit. She couldn't bear the feeling of falling from the transcendent god realm to the bottom of the valley at her age. She could no longer be like a youngster who could make a comeback after a fall. She had no chance. Before she died, it would be a great merit if she could solve the Dragon Clan's current problem and drag this black-hearted little stoic into hell. The 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl is an inheritance passed down from generation to generation of the Dragon Clan. It's a treasure that can improve bloodline power. Your mother took it for herself and refused to return it. What use do I have for a daughter like her? The soul-locking arrow glowing with green light stopped in midair amidst Long Qian's agitated roar. The tip of the arrow pointed straight at Arbor's heart and trembled. It was as if it could pierce through his heart in the next second. Do you think I'm doing all this for myself? Long Qian shouted harshly. I'm doing this for the future of the entire Dragon Clan. You only covet your own benefits and see the small benefits in front of you. Which person is willing to look at the future of the clan? Who is willing to make a small sacrifice? The 10,000-year mermaid pearl is originally a family item, and it should be passed down through the generations of the Wangchuan Dragon Clan. It shouldn't be given to your mother and left to you alone. Long Qian shouted coldly. Didn't you ask me if I sent people to Seekong Planet to kill your mother? Yes. Long Qian said coldly. If she had been willing to take responsibility for the family and handed over the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl earlier, there wouldn't have been so many troublesome things that followed. The same goes for you. Long Qian said coldly, you're just as cold-blooded and selfish as your mother. You don't care about your own family. Selfish and cold-blooded people like you are destined not to go far in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, Long Qian suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the soul-lock arrow in midair. Long Qian and his sister let out a sorrowful scream. Their eyes were fixed on the soul-locking arrow as it flew towards Arbor. Grandmother. Long Shi slid forward, but he knew he could not catch up to the speed of the arrow. In the blink of an eye, in the gap between light and shadow, a red figure suddenly rushed to Arbor's side and blocked her front. Countless streams of wood spirit power surged out and firmly caught the soul-locking arrow, which was chasing after him at high speed between the vines. Arbor's heart thumped heavily. When she looked up, she saw the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turn around and wink at her jokingly. Jojo, what are you hanging there for? The little stoic's anger instantly surged, and she glared at him irritably. Stop talking nonsense with a cheeky smile. If I couldn't block that arrow just now, what would you have done? Chapter 47:18. How can I not block it? He pursed his lips, looking unconvinced. It's just a holy weapon. It hasn't been used for many years, so it's not very nimble even if I want to use it. Look, this holy weapon's effect isn't that great. Arbor rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. Suddenly, her expression changed, and she shouted at the man in front of her, Get out of the way. How can I get out of the way? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He pretended not to hear the little fellow's exasperated cry and turned his head to continuously transmit wood's spiritual power. In the boiling seawater in front of him, a lush green wonder appeared. Strands of wooden vines swayed in the seawater, and thousands of colorful flowers bloomed in the water. If it weren't for the urgency of the situation, Arbor would definitely be very happy to admire the beautiful scenery in front of her. The rotten peach blossom's control of wood's spiritual power had already reached the pinnacle of perfection. But that soul-locking arrow, once it locked onto its ultimate target, it couldn't stop. Looking at its stubborn appearance, it definitely wouldn't let her go. Jichen kept using her holy power to lock it down. She could lock it down for a while, but not forever. If you can move, go into the star domain and hide. I'll think of something. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal blinked at her and pretended to be relaxed. Don't worry, this soul-locking arrow is locked onto you. It has no effect on others. Arbor couldn't help but laugh bitterly when she heard that. She was hanging there stiffly because she couldn't move. Get out of the way. Arbor saw that the soul-locking arrow was about to break free from the binding of thousands of vines and couldn't help but be shocked. Ji Chen's hand was injured. It must have been injured when she fought with the 13th Elder above. At this moment, she suddenly felt that she was in great danger, so she suddenly flashed to her side through the star domain and caught the soul-locking arrow. Get out of here, Arbor roared at him fiercely. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned to look at her, aggrieved. No. Arbor glared at him and roared anxiously, are you going to dodge or not? Quick. Buzz. They watched as the soul-locking arrow broke free from the vine's encirclement and broke through the layers of defense laid out by the peach blossoms. In an instant, it flew in front of the two of them. Arbor felt his vision darken. His head was dizzy, and his heart was in his throat. Rotten peach blossoms! She shouted. The soul-locking arrow was already in front of them, but the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal caught it with one hand and held it tightly in his palm. Arbor saw the blood in his palm flowing down, and his eyes seemed to be filled with the color of blood. Long Qian couldn't help but laugh coldly when he saw this, and he forcefully propped up his tattered body before he said with a ridiculing expression, once the soul-lock arrow locks onto its target, then it's the outcome of not stopping until it's dead. In this world, who could resist the might of a saint artifact? A mocking look flashed across Long Qian's eyes. A cultivator who had not reached the ultimate god realm would not be able to fight back against a sacred weapon. Rotten peach blossom. Arbor's eyes narrowed and he shouted angrily, "Let go!" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal thought to himself, why would I listen to you and let go? Even he found the soul-locking arrow troublesome, let alone Jojo, who had not reached the transcendent god realm. Xiao Mu was so anxious that she kept struggling. I have a way to deal with this thing, she said with a determined gaze. You let go. Who said that she was going to surrender? Chapter 47:19. It was just a divine weapon. It was not as if Arbor did not have one. Her left hand suddenly moved. While she was delighted, she hurriedly lifted her leg and pounced toward the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's arm. Let go! The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was shocked by her actions. He did not expect her to be released from the abyss of the sacrificial sea and jump into his arm. With this, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal abruptly loosened his grip, and the soul-locking arrow he was grasping stabbed towards Xiao Mu's heart at lightning speed. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's pupils shrank. He felt as if his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Arbor's figure suddenly disappeared into the sea. Along with the soul-locking arrow, she disappeared before everyone's eyes. Oh no! The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's heart pounded wildly. This divine weapon completely ignored space and followed Jojo into the star region. The moment Arbor entered the star region, she immediately felt the soul-locking arrow chasing after her. She could not help but curse under her breath. She quickly turned around and glared at the soul-locking arrow that was chasing after her. It was really a soul-locking technique. It had locked his soul and wouldn't let go. The power that the soul-locking arrow exuded made her not dare to act rashly. Arbor ran in front, weaving through flowers and trees. She could only watch as the soul-locking arrow pierced through dozens of peach blossom trees that were so thick that it would take 3 people to wrap their arms around them, leaving huge holes in the tree trunks. Her heart ached terribly. The soul-locking arrow caught up to her back and was about to pierce her head. Arbor quickly summoned the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron and blocked the attack. With a crisp, dang sound, the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron was obviously no match for this exceptionally ferocious soul-locking arrow. The huge cauldron body was knocked out of the cauldron, spinning in a circle in the air. As Arbor ran, she touched her left palm. There was no other way. The situation was critical. She could only use the Fushi sword in her hand to deal with the divine weapon in front of her. If he couldn't avoid this soul-locking arrow even if he hid in the star domain, then there was really no other way. Xiao Mu simply strode out of the star domain, circling the star domain's sky with the soul-locking arrow in tow. After releasing an ear-piercing buzz, she swiftly gave chase with a shake of the arrow's tail. At the same time, Mo Lien, who was cultivating in the Phoenix Spring, seemed to have sensed something. She suddenly opened her phoenix eyes that were filled with murderous intent and looked sharply towards the sky. After the little fellow rushed out of the star field, it continued to run in the sea. She ran in a hurry and looked back as she ran. Just like that, she bumped into someone. Xiao Mu's forehead hurt from slamming into that person's body, so she angrily looked up at this door plank that was blocking her way. Young Master Ding hurriedly reached out to help her, but the little fellow rudely waved his hand away. Ding Yun looked at her with a straight face and said, "Are you hurt?" As he spoke, that soul-locking arrow had already circled around the seawater and locked onto its target, Qiao Mu, again, shooting swiftly towards the middle of her back. Young Master Ding frowned and turned to look at Long Qian, who was struggling on the verge of death. There was a trace of surprise in his eyes. How did Long Qian become so dispirited in such a short time? It seemed like she didn't have long to live. This is the soul-locking arrow of the Wangchuan Dragon clan. Arbor didn't have time to talk to the person in front of him. He was concentrating on activating the Fushi sword hidden in his left hand. The situation was urgent and he couldn't think too much. Chapter 47:20. Even though she hadn't fully gathered her soul remembrance, she couldn't care less. However, if she rashly used the Fushi Greatsword, she didn't know if she would alarm Master and Ant Master. If they disregarded everything and came again, would Heavenly Dao Budo go crazy? The soul-locking arrow was extremely powerful. Even when she used the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron to block it, it was still sent flying. If it came a few more times, she didn't know if the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron would be destroyed by this damn soul-locking arrow. She didn't dare to try again. Arbor lowered her eyes slightly and moved her left hand. The tip of the sword slowly emerged from the palm of his hand. Her complexion turned a bit pale. When the Fushi Greatsword was taken out of her body, it continuously absorbed the spiritual energy in her body as if it wanted to suck her dry. She already couldn't remember how powerful the Fushi Greatsword was when she took it out in the past. She hoped it could sever the soul-locking arrow. Otherwise, she really didn't know how to resolve today's matter. Arbor took a deep breath, and her complexion abruptly changed and paled inch by inch. It was so obvious that Ding Yun, who was standing beside her, couldn't pretend he didn't see anything. "What are you doing?" Ding Yun reached out to grab her arm. Arbor dodged, but her body swayed weakly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was frightened by her actions. Arbor herself didn't know what her current situation was. However, Yuan Shurchen saw it clearly. The little girl's slender body was like a thin leaf swaying in the wind and rain. Her entire body was almost transparent, as if her soul was about to jump out of her body. It was too frightening. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hastily kicked the water forward and shouted anxiously, "Stop, Jojo, don't!" Bam! A scorching waterspout abruptly swept up from the depths of the sea, separating Yuan Shurchen and the little stoic at once. The dying Long Qian seemed to have a momentary lucidity before death. Her eyes emitted a terrifyingly bright light as she muttered, "Yes, it's open. The door to hell from the abyss of the sacrificial sea has opened. No one can struggle free from this power. The demonic sea beasts guarding the abyss of the sacrificial sea will devour all of you." "Grandmother, what are you talking about?" Long Shangyun shook Long Qian's body instinctively. "Stop it. Don't keep making mistakes and continue to make mistakes. Everything is negotiable. Discuss? Who am I going to talk to?" Long Qian turned around with a twisted expression on his face. "The Forgotten River Dragon family will become the overlord of the ocean under the nourishment of the Millennium Mermaid Pearl. Perseverance above the river of forgetfulness." Cough 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 cough. Long Shangyun was so shocked that she quickly wiped the blood off the corner of her mouth. "Grandmother." Tears streamed down Long Shangyun's face as she wailed, "Is it that in your eyes, the future of the Forgotten River Dragon clan is more important than the facial paralysis, than father, than me, than brother, than anyone else?" Long Qian stared at Long Shangyun in shock. "It's difficult for your brother to take on such a huge responsibility. When the demonic sea beasts eat all of them, you'll have to help grandmother find the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl from the pile of corpses. Save your sister Shui Yuan. I can rest assured if I leave the future to Long Shui Yuan." A strange light shot out of Long Qian's eyes, and a joyful expression appeared on her face. She grabbed Long Shangyun's arm tightly. Chapter 47:21. However, Long Shangyun only felt her grandmother's 5 fingers clawing at her, causing her to feel a chill from the bottom of her heart. The old woman seemed to have thought of something and suddenly took out a coffin from her spatial ring. Long Shangyun's eyes widened in shock. Grandmother actually placed Sister Shui Yuan in a coffin and carried it around with her? So, grandmother had planned from the start to take out the shark pearl and give it to Long Shuiyuan as soon as she killed Arbor? Long Shangyun couldn't help but shiver at the thought of this. Shui Yuan promised me that she would dedicate her life to the Forgotten River Dragon clan, the old woman said with a self-righteous expression. Let her keep the shark pearl for a while. When your brother's child grows up, let her hand over the 10,000-year-old shark pearl and pass it on to your brother's heir. Then, the future of our dragon clan will be passed down for generations to come. The old woman's eyes shone with a strange light as she said this. Long Shangyun opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. She felt that the old woman was simply bewitched. For the illusory future of the dragon clan, she had been planning and scheming. She had even used her own grandson and granddaughter to scheme against them. I can't rely on my own son or grandson. I can only place my hopes on your brother's child. Long Shangyun looked at her grandmother in a daze. Her brother didn't even have a wife now. How could she place her hopes on her brother's child? I've already chosen your elder brother's fiancée. Duo Shanmei of the Duo family has a good bloodline and talent. She is a good match for your brother. Since he can't take on the great responsibility of the dragon clan in the future, he must obey the arrangements and give birth to a smart and healthy heir for the Forgotten River Dragon clan. Long Shangyun shivered again and looked at the old woman in a daze. So, back then, you wanted to kill my aunt because she didn't obey your arrangements? The old woman probably didn't love Long Shuiyuan that much. It was just that Long Shuiyuan was a very qualified tool in her eyes. She was willing to use her own blood to predict the future of the Forgotten River Dragon clan. For the Dragon clan, she promised the old woman not to marry and to serve the clan for the rest of her life. Then what was she, Long Shangyun? The old lady suddenly grabbed Long Shangyun's arm and roared, "As the next successor, you are the aunt of your brother's child. I hope that you won't be as ignorant as Long Chuyun." Back then, when I asked her to return the mermaid pearl, she told me that the mermaid pearl had already fused with her bloodline. She will die if we take it out rashly. A trace of disdain flashed across the old lady's eyes. She shouted sternly, "So what if I die? If it was me? For the prosperity of the entire clan, even if I die, I will definitely hand over the mermaid pearl. What about her? She's just a selfish ingrate." I gave her 2 options. Take the mermaid pearl and stay behind to become the saintess of the dragon clan. You will assist the next successor of the dragon clan, which is Jing. The other one is to bring the mermaid pearl to the marriage. But the future is unpredictable. Even if something happens in the future, I won't help her. Long Shangyun shivered. It was as if she was meeting her grandmother for the first time. She just stared at her in a daze. For that ethereal future, you are going to treat your own child as a tool? Chapter 47:22. Sister Shui Yuan is obedient now. She promised you that she would never marry and protect the future of the Long family. But grandmother, you're going to die soon. Long Shangyun couldn't help but cry. Many years later, Sister Shui Yuan doesn't want to return the mermaid pearl and doesn't want to protect the family anymore. Are you going to crawl up from the ground and kill her? We are all your children. Every single one of us is an independent individual with our own thoughts and our own hearts. They are not marionettes that you can command at will and hit wherever you want them to. Rebellious daughter. Long Qian wanted to slap Long Shangyun's face. However, she felt a grip on her arm. Long Qian had grabbed her hand tightly. Long Qian pulled Long Shangyun and old madam and quickly retreated, avoiding a wave of heat that came from the bottom of the sea. Are all of you going against the heavens? Long Qian glared at Long Qian and Long Shangyun with her old eyes. The light in Long Huan's eyes dimmed bit by bit. He looked at her and said with disappointment, "Grandmother, I won't follow your arrangements and walk down the path you've arranged. I won't marry Duo Shanmei from the Duo family. You can give up." Rebellious. Long Qian was so angry that she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes were as white as ash. She knew that she didn't have much time left, but this group of juniors, one after another, didn't listen to her. The grand scheme that she had planned for the future of the Long family was going to be destroyed in the hands of these unfilial descendants. When she asked Long Chuyun to hand over the mermaid pearl, she refused. When she asked Long Qian to marry Duo Shanmei from the Duo family, she refused. When she asked Long Shangyun to support Long Qian's future children, she mocked her for being delusional. She even told her that everyone was an individual with their own thoughts and not a puppet in her hands. Even the most obedient Shui Yuan could it be that after she woke up with the mermaid pearl, she would really stop listening to her like what Long Shangyun had said? She wanted to find someone who could support the family wholeheartedly, someone who could bring the family to greater heights. Why was it so difficult? Deep in the abyss of the sacrificial sea, a terrifying roar that sent chills down one's spine resounded. Everyone looked back and saw a giant snake tail rolling up from the depths of the abyss. It hooked onto a member of the dragon clan beside Prophet 2 and dragged him down with a splash. Everyone's pupils couldn't help but shrink. That dragon clan clansman was at least at the 15th level of the spirit realm, but he'd been dragged down so easily and without a sound. He didn't have the slightest ability to resist. This demonic sea beast, I'm afraid, mature Saint Beast. Long Qian suddenly burst out laughing. She stared at the nearby Qiao Mu, whose figure was separated by the rolling waves, and remarked coldly, "You are indeed a bit stronger than I imagined. But your life ends here." Arbor was too lazy to care about the old woman. She could see it now. This old woman was headstrong and self-opinionated. She had probably reached the peak. She thought that just because she drew the blueprint for the future of the Dragon Clan, everyone had to follow her arrangements and become tools for the clan to climb to the top. But was that possible? The future wouldn't be as she wished. Because the Dragon Clan of Wang Chuan had been destroyed by her. They had no future. The future of the Dragon Clan of Wang Chuan had been destroyed by this old woman. Chapter 47-23. Did Long Qian think that the demonic sea creature in the depths of the sacrificial sea would recognize her as its master? Wasn't she too naive and full of herself? Did she really think that the demonic sea creature would be able to differentiate between her enemies and her allies? Did she think that it would let the Dragon Clan off just to attack her in Arbor? It was an indiscriminate attack. Just like right now, the giant tail in the undersea abyss struck out violently, and the boiling seawater was like a heat wave that covered everyone's faces. The streams of water turned into transparent arrows and pierced through the chests of the Dragon Clan clansmen, turning a dozen or so of them into beehives. The Dragon Clan's members were frozen on the spot, and in less than a second, they were torn apart and swept away by the waves of heat. Long Qian was shocked and didn't know how to react. That was until Long Shangyun suddenly shouted at her, "Grandmother, wire hand." She finally regained her senses and looked down at her hand. She couldn't help but scream. It turned out that her hand had been silently melted by the boiling seawater. Long Qian only realized that something was wrong when Long Shangyun reminded her. The main reason was because there wasn't a single part of her body that wasn't in pain. The pain was so intense that she didn't even notice the change in her hand. Long Shangyun couldn't help but shiver as she looked at the boiling seawater. "Let's go up, brother." The seawater had already melted her grandmother's hand, and she wasn't sure if it would melt Long Shangyun's arms, legs, or even her head. This was too scary. Could it be that in the depths of the sacrificial sea, there weren't only icebergs that hadn't melted for thousands of years, but also volcanoes? Long Shangyun didn't want to stay in this strange place where fire and water mingled, yet they were still clearly separated. Quick! Defense! Defensive spiritual weapon! Defensive spiritual weapon! Quick! Cover me with a defensive spiritual weapon! Long Qian shouted. Hearing this, Long Shangyun's fingers trembled and she hurriedly put on a defensive spiritual artifact for her. Long Qian immediately felt much better. At least the burning sensation on her skin was slightly better. At this time, the seawater had already taken on an abnormal crimson color, like layers of heat waves. Circle after circle of shrinking encirclement, it wrapped in their direction. There was scalding hot seawater all around, and there were demonic sea beasts that attacked indiscriminately. Long Shangyun felt that such days were simply too difficult. She had to rush up to the surface of the sea as soon as possible. Otherwise, she was afraid that she would really die here. The more Long Shangyun let her imagination run wild, the more scared she felt. She then turned around and shouted anxiously in her brother's direction, "Brother, let's go." Long Qian was smarter than Long Xiang. His expression was still calm. "Don't panic, Xiang Yun. As long as you circulate a portion of your spiritual power around your body, you will be able to resist this hot seawater." The reason why his grandmother's palm was melted by the scalding seawater was because she seemed to have lost the ability to defend herself. Long Qian looked at Long Qian in surprise. Long Qian, on the other hand, was curled up in pain inside the shield. He stared at his half-burned hand and screamed in pain. His eyes were filled with anger. This Mu Qiao had gone insane and stripped her of the 9 layers of spirit water in the depths of her flesh and blood, as well as in her dantian. As a result, she was now a cripple. Her cultivation had deteriorated so much that she couldn't even activate the shield. Chapter 47-24. She was simply too unlucky. A trace of anger flashed across Long Qian's aged face. This little stoic was simply too abominable. She looked in the direction of Arbor. She couldn't help but be shocked by what she saw. At this time, Arbor was like a thin leaf swaying in the wind and rain. Her figure was almost transparent as she swayed on the spot. However, there was an extremely vigorous energy revolving around her body, as if it was about to burst out from her body. Long Qian's body trembled slightly as she was separated by the defensive barrier. However, in the blink of an eye, an ink-colored figure broke through the void like a fleeting shadow and abruptly appeared beside the little stoic. This person seemed to have torn open the void with his bare hands and emerged from it. He was so fast that Long Qian didn't detect a trace of the aura of a divine realm opening. She merely stared blankly at the young man who suddenly appeared and recognized him as the crown prince of the divine province at a glance. A trace of nervousness flashed through Long Qian's heart. Looking at how proficient this crown prince was when he tore open the void and emerged from it, it didn't seem like it was his first time doing this. Could it be this crown prince of the divine province also grasped the supreme power of the void? Our dear Qiao Mu, who was engaged in a tug-of-war with the Fushi greatsword, was currently drenched in cold sweat and was somewhat hesitant. The soul-locking arrow was blocked by the thousands of defensive talismans she threw out in passing. However, these thousands of defensive talismans could only block it for about 15 minutes. At this moment, this soul-locking arrow was piercing through layer after layer of defensive barriers at a breakneck speed and was trying its best to attack Arbor. Prince Mo's sudden appearance caused the little stoic's hand that was trying to pull out the sword to stiffen slightly. She turned around to look at him in a daze. Did Jojo's lotus come out of seclusion? No, it didn't seem like it was a normal exit. Arbor panicked and her gaze roamed back and forth on his body. Just as she was about to speak, she felt her body lighten. He had already reached out and scooped her up, swiftly dodging a dozen water arrows that were shooting straight at her. When the transparent water fell into the sea, it created a series of splashes. It was full of energy. An angry roar came from the abyss. The giant snake's tail suddenly swept over like it had gone berserk, fiercely brushing past Qiao Mu and the others. Mo Lian glanced over expressionlessly. She wiped away the seawater in front of her with one hand, as if she was tearing a crack in the ocean. The countless waves created by the snake's tail were all sucked into the crack, not leaving a single bit behind. Long Huan's pupils shrank. He opened his mouth and muttered, "Is this the power of the void?" The power of the void could shatter the void and reverse the situation at any time. It made people unable to resist it at all. This man with cold phoenix eyes and stern features had grasped the power of the void. It was too unimaginable. Mo Lian lowered his head to glance at the little stoic. Although his handsome face was still expressionless, he actually said to her, "Don't be afraid." The little stoic, With Emo Lien's appearance, she really should use an image talisman to record it and play it for him to silently admire. It would definitely be very interesting. At this time, that soul-locking arrow finally broke through the layers of barriers and flew to Arbor. Unfortunately, before this fellow could stab into Arbor, the seawater in front of it parted slightly, revealing a black hole-like vortex that instantly sucked it in. "Be careful," the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal said hastily. "This soul-locking arrow ignores space." Chapter 47:25. Sure enough, as soon as the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal finished speaking, the soul-locking arrow jumped out of the black hole. The soul-locking arrow seemed to be drunk from the start. It shook its head and felt dizzy. After finally distinguishing the direction with great difficulty, she saw Xiao Mu as if she had seen a delicious snack and hastily dashed in her direction. Annoying! Emo Lien stared unhappily at the bouncing soul-locking arrow. Suddenly she opened her inner world and took out a small bronze cauldron. Arbor's eyes lit up. JoJo's lotus was indeed ferocious. Looking at the situation, was she going to refine this annoying soul-locking arrow directly? The soul-locking arrow seemed to have sensed something. It turned around and scuttled. The tail of the arrow trembled slightly and burrowed into the black hole that Emo Lien had torn open. But very quickly, it came out from the other side of the black hole again. Very intelligently, it braked in the air. If it had a face, it would definitely make a scared shitless expression at this moment. There was nothing else. It had burrowed into the black hole and escaped again. It was getting closer and closer to that expressionless kid. Was he that scary? The soul-locking arrow retreated a little, but a huge suction force suddenly pulled it over. With a clang, the soul-locking arrow fell into the small bronze cauldron. This time, it was like a ferocious tiger entering a cage. Everyone could only hear the incessant clang, clang, clang sounds. The soul-locking arrow struggled to get out of the small bronze cauldron. It knocked the cauldron's lid flying outwards. Emo Lien pressed her hand down and added a stream of holy power to seal the small bronze cauldron. She narrowed her eyes and raised her hand to throw in a stream of holy fire. Black flames suddenly sprang up from the bottom of the bronze cauldron. Instantly, the small cauldron was roasted to a faint red color. Arbor frowned as he looked at the inconspicuous small bronze cauldron in Emo Lien's hand. He suddenly thought of something and used his divine sense to enter the Tianji secret realm. Ever since he came out of the Tianji secret realm, he had been busy urging JoJo's Lotus to cultivate. Arbor did not have time to give the crafting cauldron to Lotus. At this moment, seeing him summon that small broken cauldron to refine the soul-locking arrow, Arbor finally remembered. After a quick search, he dug out the best crafting cauldron in the world, heaven and earth, from the vault guarded by the 100 or so mechanical men. The funny thing was, Charles sensed that she was taking away their treasures. At first, they stacked on top of each other and hung on the crafting cauldron, hugging it tightly without letting go. Then, because they couldn't snatch JoJo from him, they were thrown to the ground one by one, and they couldn't help but cry. That comical scene scared Arbor so much that he hurriedly locked them all in the small vault and closed the door. Out of sight, out of mind. Damn it, using a face that was similar to hers and crying nonstop, it really looked like a fantasy. Arbor took out the heaven and earth cauldron and stuffed it into Emo Lien's arms. Lien, use this to refine it. Everything that Emo Lien was doing right now was practically coming from his instincts. Strictly speaking, he was still in a state of half-cultivation and was not fully awake. But now, he was not completely unconscious. Seeing that JoJo gave him a palm-sized crafting cauldron that shone with a glazed luster, Emo Lien instinctively felt joy in his heart. Just as he made a contract with the heaven and earth cauldron, a thunderous roar came from the bottom of the ocean. Everyone's heart skipped a beat as a bad premonition floated in their hearts. For some reason, this unknown sense of danger was so strong. The sudden danger caused everyone's hearts to jump to their throats. Chapter 47:26. Emo Lien instinctively kept the cauldron of heaven and earth into her inner world, and turned around to look at the depths of the sea. Under the layers of glaciers, A head slowly emerged from the whirlpool of silver-white ice crystals. Everyone was on tenterhooks as they broke out in cold sweat. They thought that this mature sacred beast would be a ferocious beast from the ancient times. With a bloody mouth and a body that was as tough as copper, it should be as tall as a small mountain. But they didn't expect that. What emerged from the whirlpool of ice crystals was actually a human head. The beast in front of them was just as they had imagined. Its upper body was still in the form of a human, and its face was almost as white as snow. Its eyes were slightly closed, and its eyebrows and lips were silver-white in color. Arbor took a look and retracted his gaze. His gaze landed on the soul-locking arrow that was trapped inside the small bronze cauldron. Bang! In just a few seconds, the soul-locking arrow knocked away the ordinary weapon cauldron. Mo Lien frowned slightly. This ordinary cauldron that had been with him for a long time was destroyed by the soul-locking arrow just like that. He stretched out 2 fingers and grabbed the soul-locking arrow that was still trying to fly forward. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. On the other side, Long Qian subconsciously took a few steps back. When she touched Long Shangyun's arm, she quickly grabbed the ladder and whispered, "Let's go. Let's go up first. We'll talk after we get up." Long Qian wasn't stupid. She could already feel the heavy pressure that was coming from the demonic sea beast in human form. How strong was this pressure? Unknowingly, she was pressured to the point of suffocation. There were many juniors from the dragon clan in the sea, and none of them were a match for the demonic sea beast. The Wangchuan dragon clan still had to rely on these juniors to develop, so they couldn't all die here. Therefore, she was very anxious. She grabbed Long Shangyun's hand and whispered, "Let's go. We'll retreat first." Long Shangyun also felt the danger. After Long Qian grabbed her arm, she instinctively flung it away as if she was stung by a poisonous snake. Her instinctive reaction caused Long Qian's face to turn red from embarrassment. Her own granddaughter avoided her like a viper. This made her feel uncomfortable, and at the same time, anger rushed to her heart. The Wangchuan dragon clan was completely ungrateful. She really hoped that this demonic sea beast could hear her and devour all these ingrates. "Let's go." Long Qian came out of the hot sea and grabbed his sister Long Shangyun's arm. Long Qian instinctively grabbed onto Long Shangyun's other arm and refused to let go. "Shangyun, you know how grandmother used to treat you." She could only rely on the defensive barrier to resist the scalding seawater outside. If Xiangyun didn't continue to use her spiritual power to support the defensive barrier around her body, after losing the defensive barrier, she would definitely be scalded to the point where her skin would split open and her bones wouldn't even be left. Long Shangyun closed her eyes, turned around, and was about to pull her up with her. The terrified cries of the Dragon Clan's juniors could be heard all around. "Ah, why is the seawater so hot? Oh my God, it's too hot." When Long Qian saw the hundreds of juniors from the Dragon Clan, her eyes widened. She couldn't help but shout at them, "Why are you here?" Could it be that the battle above had ended? That shouldn't be the case. Chapter 47-27. Even if they had already won the battle above, these juniors shouldn't have rashly entered the sea to follow them. "Let's go, let's go." Clan leader, defensive walls have been erected all around here. What's this? This was the sacred beast confinement zone set up by the mature sacred beast in front of them. Long Qian couldn't help but shudder. He abruptly turned around and glared at Long Qian. "Grandmother, were you the one who awakened this mature sacred beast slumbering at the bottom of the sacrificial sea?" How could Long Qian admit it at a time like this? How would she dare to admit such a thing? Even if she was the one who summoned it, she didn't dare to admit it. Besides, she had no confidence at all. Previously, she wanted to summon a powerful demonic sea beast to force the little stoic to hand over the shark pearl. But now things had clearly spiraled out of her control. Even she felt powerless to reverse the situation. "Stop wasting time. Let's go." Long Qian roared anxiously at Long Qian. She turned around and saw that the half-human sacred beast had already crawled out of the ice crystal abyss. Yes, half-human. The lower half of this sacred beast's body was coiled with a giant snake tail. Long Qian guessed that if it expanded its body, it would probably be 100 meters long. It was obvious that Long Qian had underestimated the strength of this sacred beast's snake tail. It suddenly uncoiled its snake tail. Even though it was only half uncoiled, it still crushed dozens of Dragon Clan youths. Those youths from the forgetful Chuan Dragon Clan who had just entered the sea and hadn't recovered from the heat of the sea were instantly sent flying by that giant snake tail and crashed onto the ground. They didn't even have a chance to cry out before their bones and muscles were pulverized, and they all went to the Yellow Springs. Long Qian. Before Long Qian could finish her hysterical screams, the humanoid holy beast opened its eyes dangerously. His eyes were almost transparent, and they flickered with a dangerous, bloodthirsty glint. Xiao Mu obediently played the role of a little quail, hiding in Emolien's embrace as she furtively peeked at that crazed humanoid sacred beast. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hurriedly whispered to Arbor, "No matter what happens later, remember not to escape into the galaxy. Cover it properly and don't open it." Arbor's pupils shrank slightly. She immediately understood what the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal meant. This meant that in front of this mature holy beast, any space was useless. Escaping into the star field would only speed up his own death. That was because he was able to ignore the laws of space. If he were to follow Zhang Xian in, the consequences would be dire. Based on how bloodthirsty and merciless this saint beast was, it was likely that all the creatures in the star field would be wiped clean. Including Arbor, the master of the star system. At the thought of this, Arbor couldn't help but shiver. He then looked at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and said, "Let's escape together." These words were spoken very decisively. Running away was probably the best option at the moment. He ran far away and didn't want to confront him head-on. Who asked him to be ruthless? Who asked him to be so pretentious? Who asked him to fly? They didn't want to play with him anymore. Running away was the right thing to do. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at the little fellow's sparkling eyes. If it wasn't for the critical situation at the moment, he would have burst out laughing. Why did this fellow make it sound so natural to admit defeat and run away? "I'm afraid it's too late to run away. This sacred beast looks like it has gone berserk." Once he dealt with those Dragon Clan members who were like little worms, what would happen next? Chapter 47-28. Then they would become targets. The humanoid sacred beast would focus on them. Now that he had erected the sacred beast realm everywhere, how could the people inside escape? "Jojo, don't let the little white snake and the others out." Mai Chen whispered to her. If this mature sacred beast saw the little white snake and the others, it would happily devour them. Arbor nodded, secretly breaking out in cold sweat. Luckily, Mai Chen and the others were still thousands of miles above the sea. Now that this place was blocked by the sacred beast realm, it naturally wouldn't be able to sense them. As for the little white snake, she had already kept it in her galaxy. Otherwise, if they were targeted by this humanoid sacred beast, Arbor's heart shuddered, secretly rejoicing. At this time, Long Qian felt that her heart was about to stop. She watched as the young people of her clan were killed by the humanoid sacred beast like vegetables. With a sweep of his hand, they were turned into a pile of minced meat. Long Qian couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. "Don't kill them, don't kill them." This humanoid demonic beast was killing the future of the Dragon Clan. How could this be? How could this be? Shouldn't the demonic sea beasts of the Forgotten River Dragon Clan be their sacred beast guardian? Why would he attack indiscriminately? Look at his cold eyes, he couldn't see anyone at all. It was as if everyone in front of him was a small insect that had invaded his territory. Only by crushing them one by one would he be able to continue sleeping peacefully. It shouldn't be like this. Long Qian looked at the scene in front of her with tears streaming down her face. She felt as if a sharp knife was gouging the flesh from her heart. These young people who could create the future of the Forgotten River Dragon Clan. But they were all killed by a sacred beast. He watched as the Dragon Clan's people were swept up into the air by the demonic sea beast's tail like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves before turning into a pile of dust that fell to the ground. Long Qian's body fell backward and landed heavily on the ground. There was no hope. There was no hope. To think that the future of the Dragon Clan would be written in such a hilarious way. The youths of the Forgotten River Dragon Clan had all died in this comical battle. What future did they have left to write? The funniest thing was that this humanoid holy beast was the trump card that the Forgetful River Dragon Clan's clan leader had personally summoned. It was a trump card that he intended to use against his own granddaughter. However, even Long Qian herself was baffled by the sudden turn of events. When the last member of the Dragon Clan who was desperately trying to escape to the surface of the sea was smashed into meat paste by the huge tail of the humanoid Saint Beast, Long Shangyun lowered her head to take a look and couldn't help but jump in fright. Long Qian's eyes were wide open as if he had just seen something unbelievable. His entire body was stiff and his face was stiff. "Grandmother!" Long Shangyun cried out in a mournful voice, trembling as she reached out to feel for her grandmother's breath. Ah! Long Shangyun's body fell backwards into the scalding sea water. Long Qian rushed over with a calm expression. He reached out to feel the old lady's breath before turning around and nodding at Long Shangyun. "Grandmother, she's gone." Long Shangyun shuddered as she looked at Long Qian's furious face. She couldn't help but mumble, "Brother, grandmother must have been angered to death." This was the biggest joke in the world. The Forgetful River Dragon Clan's clan leader was angered to death. Chapter 47-29. Long Qian's heart ached when she saw this. Unable to withstand such a huge blow, she fell backward and fell into the boiling water with her shield. His whole body sizzled as it was being burned by the boiling hot sea water. "Grandmother!" Long Qian quickly rushed over with a calm expression. He raised his hand and touched the old lady's nose. Then, he turned around and looked at his sister with a strange expression. "Grandmother, she's not breathing." Long Shangyun shivered and lowered her head to look at Long Qian. Her eyes were wide open, and she looked like she had died with a grievance. It was a terrifying sight. Long Shangyun subconsciously reached out and grabbed her brother's hand. She couldn't help but mumble, brother, grandmother, could it be that she died from anger?" This was the biggest joke in the world. The dignified leader of the Wangchuan Dragon Clan was angered to death by a mature sacred beast? Who would believe it if he told them about it? Long Qian shook his head. She was severely injured before this. In other words, the leader of the Dragon Clan probably knew that he didn't have long to live. Because he was severely injured before, and seeing the juniors of the Wangchuan Dragon Clan being massacred, he couldn't do anything about it. He was so angry that he couldn't recover. She left so suddenly. Long Qian and his sister looked at each other, not knowing what to think. Their grandmother, who had always been decisive, had passed away in such a strange way. Although she had stopped breathing, their grandmother was now a transcendent realm cultivator. Her divine sense could probably suddenly. Long Huan's gaze changed slightly. He quickly pulled Long Shangyun, who was beside him, and quickly retreated. Long Shangyun suddenly hugged her head and cried out in alarm. Her body trembled uncontrollably as she shivered. "Shangyun, Shangyun." Long Qian stared at Long Shangyun angrily. As he reached out to support her, he couldn't help but shout angrily, "Grandmother!" Your divine sense quickly retreat from Shangyun's body. She can't withstand your transcendent realm divine sense. She will, Long Shangyun's body stiffly fell backwards. At the same time, the mature sacred beast that had swept through the entire Forgotten River Dragon Clan slowly turned its cold and indifferent glassy eyes in their direction. Just like that, he stared coldly at Long Shangyun across the churning magma-like seawater. Long Huan's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Suddenly, they saw the humanoid super holy beast stretching out its huge snake tail and sweeping it towards them. Long Shi didn't have time to think. He quickly grabbed Long Shangyun's body and retreated. At the same time, clusters of black flames suddenly ignited in Emolien's hand, firmly locking the soul-locking arrow that was trying to escape in a panic in her palm. With the burning of the holy fire, the soul-locking arrow became a little more obedient. It lay on Emolien's palm and stopped courting death. Probably because it realized that the man in front of it was a terrifying guy who could refine itself, The soul-locking arrow obediently stayed in his palm and pretended to be dead. After Mo finished burning the soul-locking arrow, he suddenly flicked his hand. A stream of light flew out. The soul-locking arrow flew towards the humanoid holy beast at lightning speed. The arrow pierced towards the beast's thick snake tail. 40480 had some small changes. It was mainly to increase the old lady's mental activity. It didn't matter if she saw it or not. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.